Chapter 41. Comprehensive Upgrade. With a stroke of good luck this morning, not a single wooden crate was missed during the spirit pacification ritual. Her luck was off the charts. Although it wasn't 100% accurate, this blessing was more effective at opening crates than any good luck charm. This wasn't metaphysics, but tangible results. From 6 wooden crates this morning, she obtained Upgrade Card 1, Reinforcement Card 1, Building Card 1, Item Card 2, Key 1, Scrap Iron 10, Charcoal 8, Mineral Water 6, Hem Sausage *5. In addition, she salvaged some extra materials beyond the crates, Wood 20, Plastic 10, Thatch *5. Although the supplies weren't abundant, most were cards, making it worthwhile. It seems like these are the only materials I can fish from the sea. Is there nothing else? Like, where would I get minerals? And Ling was a little puzzled. If she only got these materials each time, her island would remain in a primitive state for another decade without relying on cards. A key. There's still a locked wooden crate in my cabin. She immediately returned to the cabin with the key and opened the last locked crate. It was empty except for a reinforcement card. Okay, and Ling had a feeling she'd been scammed. After sorting and processing these materials, she looked at the 6 different colored cards in her hand, lost in thought. The item cards were straightforward. She used them without hesitation. Navigation Locator. Can locate nearby deserted islands, but you need to have a boat first. Eternal Lamp. Purely natural, no consumption, no pollution, essential for night lighting. Navigation Locator? What's that? Adhering to the principle of building things she didn't understand to find out, and Ling decisively built it inside her cabin. It was about the size of a desktop computer, with a square display screen like radar, and a pointer constantly rotating, detecting something nearby. Built Navigation Locator. Reward. JK Outfit *3. Alright, that's how the system plays, huh? And Ling sighed afterwards. Forget it. At least it's clothing. Better than having nothing to wear. The point shop has been updated with new items. Huh. And Ling quickly opened the shop and found that besides the Keystone card for 10 points, there was now a location card for 30 points. Without hesitation, she bought it, because the system wouldn't give any further hints unless she held it in her hand. Location card, used in conjunction with the navigation locator to detect nearby resource islands. There is a certain risk of failure. Hint. The island where the survivor is located is called Construction Island. The island periodically entered is called Survival Island, and resource islands are different from both, possessing only resources and having very low danger. Very low danger again. I believe you, my foot. And Ling cursed. She understood. It turned out that mineral resources and such things needed to be obtained by landing on resource islands. But the system just said, if I want to go to a resource island, I have to have a boat first. And Ling looked at the anchored raft nearby. This thing should be fine, right? Looking at the 4 remaining cards in her hand, and Ling sneered and directly used the red upgrade card on the raft. In an instant, the entire raft underwent a huge change. Railings rose around the sides, and the whole thing became an oval shape pointed at both ends. There was even a simple wooden shed on top. The raft had upgraded into a wooden boat, with several compartments inside for storing things. Upgrade cards are the best. And Ling was a little happy. Didn't this mean that the wooden boat, like her cabin, could continue to upgrade and evolve? One was her residence, and the other was her essential travel tool. Knowing the information about the 3 types of islands, this mode of transportation had also become very important. Ling then took out her only building card, glanced at the front, which showed an indoor pattern, and didn't understand what it meant. Building card. Wooden interior. Can turn any interior into pure wood decoration and flooring. Subsequent expansion of the house area only requires the appropriate addition of wood. Essential for decoration, very convenient. Gain 2 points. This is a single 6. This counts as a building? Seeing this building card, and Ling already knew how to use her reinforcement card. Reinforce the cabin. As the card disappeared from her hand, the entire cabin suddenly expanded, from its original 4 square meters to 10 square meters instantly, and the facilities inside became more complete. There was even a reserved space for a stove and chimney. The wooden plank walls were reinforced, and the wooden windows were larger and more numerous, providing excellent overall lighting. Of course, the only drawback was that the floor was still the island's soil, damp and messy. Then she used the building card in conjunction, consuming a total of 50 pieces of wood, and the entire interior was instantly brand new. The floor became a wooden floor with beautiful grain, like it had been waxed. The four walls became smooth and flat, and everything looked so beautiful. Looking at it now, her simple wooden bed seemed a little out of place. The last card was also a reinforcement card, and Ling was pondering whether to reinforce her bed or the paddle. Honestly, there were too many things on the island that needed reinforcement. Even if she could locate a resource island and had a boat, she didn't know how long it would take to row with that paddle, while the bed, well, she could make do for now, so reinforce the paddle. She came to her wooden boat, and as the last card disappeared from Ling's hand, the paddle was reinforced. Hand crank propeller. Can be installed on a wooden boat, energy saving and time saving, efficiency increased tenfold, very convenient, consumes only 2 steamed buns per 100 kilometers. I thought it would be electric directly. It seems I really overestimated it. And Ling clicked to install, placing the propeller at the back of the wooden boat. This boat didn't have sails, which meant she had to keep cranking. Maybe a sail would appear after the next reinforcement or upgrade. This thing was similar to the scenic tourist boats she had ridden before, with a principle similar to a bicycle. After dealing with the boat, Ling returned to her cabin. Now the cabin's area was 10 square meters, and the island was only 15 square meters, which seemed a bit small. She used 50 points to expand the island area again to 20 square meters, which finally satisfied her. Then came expanding the cabin. She had to rearrange the structures inside again. After spending half an hour rearranging, she could finally start eating lunch. Light the fire, boil water, and Ling was going to have a hot fish soup for lunch today. She took out a wooden arrow, used it as a skewer, pierced a squid, and placed it by the iron stove. Of course, squid tasted best grilled. Before long, a pot of fragrant fish soup was ready, and with the delicious grilled squid, Ling ate with gusto. The only drawback was the lack of some seasonings, but she added some sea salt from the seawater filtration device. Eating a little shouldn't hurt. Phew, so fragrant. The cabin now had an eternal lamp, and although it wasn't very bright, it was much better than a torch. After all, it had no consumption. There was a wooden box outside the lamp, and covering it achieved the effect of turning it off, which was very convenient. Unexpectedly, in just one day, her quality of life had taken a qualitative leap. Chapter 42. First Time at Sea. After finishing lunch, Ling rested briefly. Looking at the changes in the cabin, she felt increasingly satisfied. It would be even better if I had a companion. She thought this way. After all, humans are social creatures, and it's inevitable to feel lonely after being alone for a long time. However, for Ling, this was a minor issue. Influenced by the environment, who would care about such things? She inserted the location card she had just exchanged into the machine beside her, like inserting it into an ATM. The card was directly swallowed and disappeared. At this moment, the navigation locator started beeping, and the green pointer on it rotated rapidly. Ling stared intently at the screen in front of her. With the blessing of good luck, she didn't believe she could fail to locate the island. Location successful. Resource island coordinates, 2135. A small dot appeared on the screen. It seemed that the distance from her central location was not far. Ling didn't know what the coordinates meant, but according to the directional indicator, she couldn't go wrong finding the resource island. She planned to explore this resource island this afternoon and see if she could discover anything good. Now that she had all the tools and was blessed with good luck, it was simply the best time to go to sea. The only slight concern was how far this island was from her. She didn't know. However, the system definitely wouldn't lead her to a dead end. Since she had discovered the resource island while having a small raft in the early stage, she guessed it should be reachable in the same way. Without delay, Ling decided to set off immediately. The resource island and survival island must have something in common. For example, they certainly wouldn't let you stay on the island for a long time. However, just as she walked to the boat, she was stunned by the empty deck. How was she supposed to distinguish direction on this vast sea? And how could she ensure she could return to her island? Isn't this boat missing something? Ling was a little puzzled. At least a compass would be nice. Wait, the navigation locator, it wouldn't be placed on the boat, would it? She decisively used the building module to start rearranging the furniture and discovered that this thing could indeed be placed on the boat. All right, Ling admitted she had been stupid. This looks much better now. She climbed onto the boat carefully with her backpack. The swaying motion with the waves made her instantly lose her sense of security. She couldn't swim. If she fell into the water, she would have to start over. Pulling up the anchor, Ling calmed herself down and started the propeller slowly. As the distance grew farther, she looked back at the island, which was gradually shrinking in her field of vision. She checked her light screen ring again and found everything normal. Then she relaxed. In this way, Ling's first sea voyage began. There were 3 points on the navigation locator. One was a small green dot representing her construction island, and one was a green triangle representing the resource island. The center represented her current position. Soon, the island behind her disappeared from Ling's sight, but she didn't actually feel like she was moving very fast. It seems like living on a boat is actually a pretty good option. Ling discovered that the functions of the small boat were almost the same as the island. It could also be expanded indefinitely, and maybe it could even be upgraded into an aircraft carrier or something later. And without the navigation locator, drifting with the waves might also lead to encountering resource islands. It also made fishing for materials on the sea surface much more convenient. This moment, Ling suddenly noticed a gray triangular flag rapidly drifting towards her from a distance. And it was upright, which immediately piqued her curiosity. But the closer it got, the more she realized something was wrong. Damn, that's a shark. Ling was startled and instantly remembered the previous prompts from the light screen. Carelessly going into the sea was a very dangerous behavior. She had thought she was not in that category since she had a boat. Ling didn't accelerate to escape because she knew she couldn't outrun the shark. She immediately took out her deer antler bow from her backpack, took out an arrow, aimed at the shark, and shot. Whoosh! The arrow landed in the water, creating a small splash, but with no reaction. Ling knew she had missed. She immediately followed up with a second arrow. As the shark got closer, the target got bigger. Although she wasn't hitting every shot, at this distance, it was completely enough. Whoosh! This arrow successfully pierced the shark's back, and the surrounding seawater was instantly stained red. But this arrow not only didn't deter the shark, but made it even more frenzied. Ling immediately began to attack again. After shooting 5 or 6 arrows, hitting the shark several more times, just as Ling was about to take out her pistol to finish it off, the shark gave up the attack and fled in disgrace. Consider yourself lucky. Ling snorted coldly. There was nothing that couldn't be solved with 1 shot. If there was, then 2 shots. But is the damage of this deer antler bow so low? She held the bow and arrow in her hand, looking at it left and right, and finally helplessly put it back into her backpack. After this little episode, some time had been wasted. She could only accelerate forward without stopping. Glancing at the time remaining on her pendant, she had wasted half an hour, a total of nearly an hour, and she hadn't even covered half the distance. Ling felt she had been too hasty. If she only had 1 day, she would be at a big loss. The scorching sun hung high overhead. Even hiding under the wooden shed, she still felt a burning heat, and her back was covered in fine sweat, becoming sticky. The weather was already hot, and she was also exercising, making her even hotter. She could only temporarily roll up the sleeves of her sweatshirt to increase heat dissipation. I always feel like the weather has gotten much hotter since returning to the island this time. Ling's beautiful eyebrows were slightly raised, and the sunlight reflecting off the sea surface made her involuntarily squint her eyes. She had originally wanted to salvage some materials along the way, but she thought it would not only waste time but also waste physical strength. Even if she retrieved the crates, there was no place to put them, which was too much trouble, so she simply gave up. Oh yeah, I'm an esper now. Ling slapped her forehead, finally realizing it. She immediately tried to control the propeller with her ability. It works. Ling was overjoyed. Now she could directly free her hands. She immediately took out mineral water and gulped it down, then lay down in the wooden shed to rest. Soon, she had traveled most of the distance. During this time, she had been getting up to observe the coordinates to prevent herself from going off course. The journey was very smooth, and she didn't encounter any more dangers like sharks. In the distance, a small island was gradually appearing in her field of vision. Chapter 43. Different Professions. Just as Ling was excitedly anticipating landing on the island, an acquaintance sent her a private message. Survivor 533, Qin Xiao? She was a little puzzled. They had exchanged their IDs when they were on the island before. Although she couldn't be sure if they were on the same channel, As far as Ling knew, each survivor's ID was unique. Qin Xiao, I heard you completed the hidden mission and led all the survivors to clear the stage directly? Ling, yes, there are two types of hidden missions, individual and team. Qin Xiao, did you get any special rewards? Ling was taken aback. Did the other party also obtain a profession card and become an esper? While she was still thinking about whether to tell Qin Xiao this news, the impatient Qin Xiao sent another message. Qin Xiao, sorry, I was being presumptuous. I received an A rating after completing the hidden mission settlement, and the reward was a profession card. As expected, if the other party obtained a profession card after completing the individual mission, it seemed a bit unreasonable that she, who completed the team mission, didn't receive a profession card as a reward. But Ling didn't know what professions were currently available, and she couldn't directly reveal to the other party that she had a rare hidden profession. After thinking for a moment, she decided to ask Qin Xiao first. Ling, I also obtained a profession card with the same rating as you, but I have a bit of a collector's habit. I wanted to inquire about profession information, but I didn't find any, so I haven't used the card yet. What's your profession? Qin Xiao, I'm a beast tamer, a gold profession card. You should know its ability from the name, right? Beast tamer? What beasts could there be here? Sea beasts? Ling glanced at her wooden boat, dumbfounded. So, could survivors with these professions directly ride sea beasts to the resource islands? What kind of treatment was this? It's so unfair. She still had to painstakingly row the boat. Ling, wait, you said gold profession card. Are there other colors? As far as she knew, the color represented by each card was fixed, and there was no such thing as color grading. For example, item cards were silver-white, building cards were purple, upgrade cards were red, reinforcement cards were blue, and so on. Besides these, Ling hadn't seen any other corresponding colored cards. Qin Xiao, no, as far as I know, general profession cards should be gold, but there's another special kind of profession card, which is black. Ling, black? What's the difference between the two? Qin Xiao, after using a gold profession card, the level is blue recruit, and you need to increase it level by level. You can understand it as a cultivator. Black profession cards, on the other hand, cannot be upgraded. The level is fixed from the beginning, but it's not limited to the recruit level. Ling, so, if I obtained a black profession card, I might be a high-level esper from the start? Qin Xiao, exactly. This is called an awakened. Whether they can be upgraded is still unknown. I thought you would get a black profession card after completing the high-difficulty hidden mission. Ling, I also hoped so, but it's hard to say which one is stronger or weaker. It can only be said that black profession cards have a big advantage in the early stages. Qin Xiao, I think so too. Gold profession cards already have a probability of 1%, and the probability of black profession cards might be even lower. Ling, awakened, and cultivator. The names are pretty good. Qin Xiao, besides beast tamer, there are some other professions, such as transcendent and evolver. Ling, unexpectedly, you're quite well connected. Qin Xiao, the future situation is always changing, and you and I are both espers. We can cooperate in the long term. What do you think? Ling, sure, thanks for the trust. Qin Xiao wasn't a bad person by nature, and Ling didn't dislike him. Having one more friend in this vast ocean world wasn't a bad choice. Moreover, he had unconditionally disclosed a lot of information and didn't ask about Ling's profession. Looking at the resource island close at hand, Ling knew that she couldn't continue chatting with him, so she politely replied, Ling, I'm about to land. Talk to you later. Qin Xiao, you're already starting to search for resource islands so soon? Qin Xiao was clearly surprised. He even suspected that Ling was also a beast tamer or had abandoned her own island. Ling smiled and didn't reply, but sat up, walked out of the wooden shed, and prepared to drop anchor. The island in front of her wasn't too big. At least she could see the end at a glance. The island was filled with birdsong and fragrant flowers, and the environment was very beautiful, like a paradise. This is a resource island. The moment Ling set foot on the island, the light screen displayed a prompt as expected. Resource island ID 0032. Exploration time 1 day. Introduction. The island has abundant mineral resources and freshwater, fruits, vegetables, mountain delicacies, and game. You can even find treasure. Hint. Each resource island will sink to the bottom of the sea with sunset, and the coordinates will be refreshed. If you don't want to be buried at sea, please leave the island before dark. Only one day. And Ling frowned. No, she should only have less than half a day left now. I should have come in the morning. Just as she murmured, the next second, the light screen popped up 3 more prompts. You are the first survivor in the entire channel to set foot on a resource island. Reward: a complete set of toiletries. You are the first survivor in the entire server to set foot on a resource island. Reward: a solar-powered automatic shower stall. First time setting foot on a resource island. Reward: 3 days of exploration time. The island will not sink at night, and the coordinates will not be refreshed. And Ling suddenly became excited. The last 3 were rewards from the system. She immediately looked at the wooden boat beside her. Fortunately, the rewards didn't directly appear here, which meant they had been directly sent to her island. And now she had 3 days of exploration time. There was no need to rush. She could carefully explore this island. Fortunately, I had the foresight to bring some food. And Ling walked towards the island with her backpack. However, the resource island prompt also told her that a 30-point location card not only had the risk of failing to locate, but the exploration time for the resource island obtained was only 1 day. The next day, the coordinates would disappear, and she would have to spend points again to search. As for whether she could find this island again, she didn't know. Chapter 44: A Bountiful Harvest. And Ling walked on this island, the grass beneath her feet clean and tidy, the sunlight overhead exceptionally bright. This resource island felt entirely different from Survival Island, devoid of any eerie atmosphere. It was just like any ordinary small island. On the beach by the sea, there were a few coconut trees, but Ling wasn't interested in them now. Instead, she continued walking towards the island's interior. Soon, a banana grove appeared in her field of vision. Because they grew naturally, the trees weren't evenly spaced, but the rows of large bananas growing on them were surprisingly healthy. Looking at these golden fruits, Ling became excited. Harvesting was a troublesome task, and also a physically demanding one. But she wasn't tall enough, and wouldn't be foolish enough to painstakingly chop down these banana trees. There had to be at least 1,000 bananas here. I've struck it rich. Ling had 3 days to explore, so naturally, she couldn't miss any resources. Although her physical strength as a frail woman was limited, she mustn't forget that she was now an esper. And although banana trees were called trees, they weren't woody plants, and decomposing them wouldn't yield wood. Ling took out the simple axe from her backpack and directly controlled it with her ability, sending it flying towards the base of the banana bunches. Crack! A bunch of bananas snapped off and fell to the ground. Ling walked over, picked it up, divided it, and put it into her backpack. One bunch had about 20 bananas. She picked one up, peeled it, and ate it. It's quite sweet. At the same time, her other hand wasn't idle, controlling the axe to fly back and forth among the banana trees, bunches of bananas falling to the ground one after another. She suddenly realized that her ability didn't seem to be any worse than a beast tamer's. It was just right for a girl, without having to exert much effort. An hour later, this small banana grove was completely cleared, and all the bananas had fallen to the ground. Ling felt a headache, probably from overuse of her ability. She busied herself, shuttling among the banana trees, decomposing them. Another half an hour passed, and finally, she was done. But there were too many bananas. Her backpack only had 16 slots, each holding 50 items. Even if she emptied her entire backpack, she could only fit 800 bananas. And there were still some left on the ground. Besides, her backpack couldn't be entirely filled with bananas. The compartments in the wooden boat didn't have a spatial storage function, and she couldn't pile all these bananas onto the boat. I didn't expect there would be so many. Moreover, they couldn't be preserved for long and would rot very quickly. But Ling had a clever plan. She hadn't intended to take all these bananas back anyway. Opening the light screen, selecting chat, she directly sent a bunch to Qin Xiao and Chen Rue each, a full 20 bananas per person, enough for them to eat. Qin Xiao: it seems there are a lot of resources on the island. Thanks. And Ling: you're welcome. Chen Rue: thank you, sis. You're such a good person. And Ling: eat more. Good for bowel movements and detoxification. Chen Rue: it was only because she relied on her ability that she could accomplish all this. If it were an ordinary survivor, just collecting these bananas would waste half a day. let alone exploring other resources on the island. And Ling didn't stop eating while chatting with them. She ate 2 more bananas and had reached the point where she felt nauseous at the sight of them. At this stage, very few people had obtained abilities, let alone survivors who had found resource islands. There were none. She was going to use these bananas to trade with the survivors, a dimension-reducing blow, making a fortune quietly. It was a pity that the current survivors only had those basic supplies, nothing novel. Everything had to wait until they landed on resource islands before the variety became richer. The difficulty of obtaining wood was almost 0. 1 banana was indeed priceless. A 1:10 exchange rate was too dark. After all, the sense of satiety was very low, sales would be slow, and not everyone would be willing to trade. Then a 1:5 exchange rate should be fine, right? And Ling directly listed 100 bananas. The only advantage of the exchange was that she could delay receiving the goods, up to 3 days, which could just help her deal with the surplus supplies on the resource island. It could also help other survivors. I'm such a good person. And Ling continued listing items contentedly. Thatch, 1:5, 100 listed. Scrap iron, 1:1, 300 listed. Charcoal, 1:4, 100 listed. Iron nails, 1:4, 100 listed. Plastic, 1:2, 100 listed. Wooden crate keys, 10:1, 100 listed. Alright, all the bananas are taken care of. And Ling clapped her hands, put away the axe, closed the light screen, stood up, and stretched. Now, she was going to be rich. She was afraid that even the spatial storage box on her island wouldn't be enough. Although the trading module was anonymous, most survivors weren't stupid. Who could take out so many bananas at once? It must be the same person. At this moment, the survivors in the chat module were going crazy, but the purchase speed didn't slow down. After all, after living here for so many days, some people hadn't even had a bite of fruit. Who would be unwilling to part with a mere 5 pieces of wood? As for the pricing of other materials, it wasn't considered expensive. And Ling wasn't being a real profiteer. She just wanted to quickly convert these bananas into the materials she needed. Becoming rich overnight put her in a great mood, and she continued to explore the island further. She was now more interested in things like mineral resources. Only by unlocking those could she make more advanced tools and buildings later. Survival games? She was more than familiar with them. The side of the resource island wherein Ling entered seemed to have more fruit. Soon, she saw a few watermelon vines with 4 ripe watermelons hanging on them. These were different from bananas. She wouldn't sell them. She immediately walked over and collected them into her backpack, quickly leaving the sparsely vegetated woods. And Ling also discovered some animal droppings, indicating that there were animals on the island. Could such a small island form its own ecosystem? And Ling wondered. No, it can't be explained by common sense. If that's the case, wouldn't everything be gone when the resource island sinks to the bottom of the sea at night? Coming to a small mound, she reached the top. There weren't many trees on the resource island, so the view was wide open. Ling found a rocky hill the size of a rockery in the center of the island, with an opening at the bottom. Further ahead, the vegetation was sparse, with all kinds of stones. She guessed that must be where the mineral resources were located. Wouldn't that opening be the so-called treasure? Chapter 45, Skill Card. And Ling set off towards her target. The island wasn't actually large. If she just strolled around, it wouldn't take half a day to cover the entire island. The only time-consuming thing was mining resources and collecting them. Just imagine, if it were another survivor at this moment, without abilities or a spatial backpack, simply collecting these resources would take an unknown amount of time. Given the current situation of the survivors, it was likely that apart from a few espers, no one else had access to resource islands yet. Splash! Ahead was a small stream flowing down from above, the sound of rushing water audible. And Ling walked over. This was the downstream area. She squatted by the stream and washed her face, instantly feeling much cooler. The stream was clear to the bottom, and she could even see some small fish and shrimp inside. She cupped her hands, scooped up a handful of stream water, and tasted it. The water was cool and sweet, natural spring water. It was a pity she didn't have a container to collect the fresh water or use it for trading. Although within Ling's ingenuity, she could also think of a way, it was too troublesome and unnecessary. Currently, the bananas she had traded were enough to keep her supplied with these basic materials. There was no need to waste time here. Following the stream upwards, The small hill at the center of the island was not far ahead. The stream emerged from the top of the hill, where there was a spring. But Ling was more concerned about whether there was anything good inside the cave. She picked up the pace, unconsciously quickening her steps, and soon arrived in front of the small hill. The hill, which had looked small from the top of the mound earlier, now revealed its peculiarity when Ling actually stood before it. This looks like an artificially built rockery. Ling looked up at the rugged, gully-ridden mountain and began to search around for the cave entrance she had seen earlier. Soon, the more than 2-meter-high, semicircular cave entrance appeared before Ling. The sea breeze blew against the mountain, flowing through the gullies, making a whistling sound. A cool breeze blew from the dark cave entrance, giving her goosebumps and making her shiver involuntarily. Ling gathered some thatch and wood from nearby and made a simple torch. The cave entrance wasn't too big, so it wouldn't take too long. Before entering, she threw a stone into the cave. Thud! A large group of dark bats immediately flew out. From the sound, there was no underground river inside, and the cave wasn't very large. Ling walked in with the torch. The faint firelight could only illuminate a small area around her. To see what was around, she had to search carefully. Coal detected. Can be mined with a simple pickaxe. Mining efficiency 0.5. She looked down and saw that the ground beneath her feet was indeed pitch black. Lifting her shoes, she found that the soles were already stained black. So dark. Ling frowned. Her ability would probably take some time to recover, so if she wanted to mine now, she would have to do it manually. But she couldn't mine with one hand while holding the torch. Such a hassle. Ling went back outside the cave entrance, quickly gathered some wood, brought it into the cave, and lit a small bonfire. She decided that no matter how much she could mine, when the fire was about to go out, she would stop, even if there was more left. Clink, clink. The sound of the pickaxe striking the coal soon echoed within the cave. Just like chopping trees, the ore also had health points. Everything was digitized in half an hour, and Ling only managed to get 10 coal, and it took a lot of effort. Seeing the fire gradually dying out, she decided to give up. She had entered this cave to see if there was any treasure. Who would be foolish enough to mine in this dark place? Lighting a torch she had prepared earlier, Ling continued her exploration. The mining efficiency of the simple pickaxe is too low, only 0.5. She didn't expect it to double, but at least a pickaxe with a normal efficiency of 1.0 would be good. Ling, feeling slightly resentful, glanced at the time on her pendant. It was almost dark, and she had to hurry. Although the system had said the island wouldn't sink, what if it did? She had to return to the boat before dark, wait, and see what happened. Hey, what's that? Following the firelight, Ling saw something reflective in the depths of the cave. Uncertainly, she walked forward. It was a treasure chest, smaller than a regular wooden crate, looking like the kind specifically used to hold jewelry. There must be something good inside. There really is a treasure chest. Ling hurried to the chest and was about to open it. The treasure chest on the resource island had to be better than the wooden crates drifting in the sea, right? Clang, clang, clang. The chest didn't budge. She looked down and was dumbfounded. There was a lock on it. All right, playing this game. Huh? Even on a resource island, you're giving me puzzles? Ling observed the lock. It was small and thin, a very ordinary small lock. If everything in this world is digitized and includes superpowers and doesn't violate common sense. She took out her pistol, aimed the muzzle at the small lock, turned her body to the side of the chest, and bang! A loud gunshot echoed in the cave. A smell of gunpowder filled the air, and the lock broke. Who the hell is going to look for a key for you? The treasure chest was opened, and Ling held the torch, looking down inside, a green card, and nothing else. Puzzled, she picked it up. She had never seen a green card before. Skill card. Reading the 3 words on the back by the torchlight, Ling murmured involuntarily. As for the front, it was a pattern of 2 intersecting diamonds, and she couldn't tell what it meant. General skill card. Can choose to learn any of the following basic skills. Each time you learn a skill, all attribute points +1. Learnable skills: hand-to-hand combat, swordsmanship, knife skills, archery, spearmanship, firearms proficiency, mechanical engineering. Note: each survivor can only choose to learn one of these skills. After that, each time a general skill card is obtained, it will automatically be converted into a fixed skill card. So that's how it is. Isn't this just a reinforced version of the card specifically for survivors? Increasing all attributes each time she learned a skill, but only being able to learn one skill, seemed like something she had to carefully consider. Logically speaking, I'm a sword master, so I should learn swordsmanship. But the key is, I don't have a sword? Chapter 46. Return to the island. And Ling looked puzzled. The last two skills seemed like support skills, and besides herself, who had been lucky, who could get a gun in the early stages, only a fool would learn firearms proficiency. As for archery, she had 100% accuracy. Why would she need to learn it? Of course, she could store the skill card and consider which skill to learn later. But after thinking about it, Ling realized that most skills weren't suitable for her. Since I'm a sword master, regardless of the consequences, blindly choosing swordsmanship can't be wrong. She made up her mind, stopped hesitating, and directly chose to learn swordsmanship. Learning successful. All attribute points +1. Current skill level. Basic swordsmanship LV.1. And Ling felt like she had suddenly grasped some basic sword techniques. If she had a weapon now, she even felt like she could perform a sequence on the spot. In addition, her physical attributes were also enhanced at this moment. Whether it was her strength, speed, or endurance, they were all slightly better than before. The only pity was that her foundation was low because she was a girl. If it were Qin Xiao, his basic attributes would definitely be very high. Perhaps? No, definitely. Even my currently enhanced physical fitness is still no match for those trained martial artists. And Ling held the torch and began to search other areas of the cave to see if there were any other special gains. Unsurprisingly, there was nothing else in the small cave besides some coal and the treasure chest she had just found. The skill card was a type of card she had never seen before. And Ling guessed that this kind of card would only appear on resource islands, just like how profession cards only appeared on survival islands. Leaving the cave, the western sky was already dyed orange red. The huge setting sun about to touch the horizon. It was about to get dark. And Ling gave up further exploration and prepared to return to her boat. Along the way, perhaps due to her enhanced physical fitness, she unconsciously quickened her pace, a journey that originally took an hour. She completed in only 40 minutes, returning to the wooden boat by the sea. Boarding her boat, and Ling first observed the navigation locator. The coordinates were still displayed. She planned to wait until nightfall to confirm whether the island would sink to the bottom of the sea and whether the coordinates on the navigation locator would disappear. Neither on the island nor on the boat was a good place to rest. If the coordinates didn't disappear, she would rather return to her own island to rest. After all, in just half a day, she had explored about 1/3 of this island. The 3 days given by the system were more than enough. Soon, the horizon swallowed the setting sun, and the world was completely enveloped in darkness. The resource island didn't disappear, but under the cover of night, it felt inexplicably eerie, no longer the paradise of birdsong and fragrant flowers it had been during the day. Without lighting equipment, exploring the island at night would be very troublesome, and Ling needed to rest. The good news was that the coordinates on the navigation locator hadn't disappeared either. It seemed that the coordinates were tied to the island. Only when the island refreshed or she inserted a new location card would the coordinates disappear in any case. And Ling could explore the entire island tomorrow. Since that was the case, Ling chose to return to her construction island now. She pulled up the anchor, put down her backpack, and started the propeller, slowly turning the wooden boat around. The endless darkness gradually swallowed the small boat whole. During the day, the endless ocean was inexplicably frightening, and at night, the pitch-black darkness where she couldn't see her hand in front of her face made it even more difficult to discern any direction. The faint green light reflected on Ling's face. Her eyes were fixed on the screen of the navigation locator, and her hands unconsciously moved faster. Ling was just an ordinary person. It was impossible not to feel any fear in this environment. Fortunately, she had started to adapt to this world early on. As long as the coordinates didn't have any problems, whether it was day or night, it was the same to her. The survival manual only said that the floating materials on the sea would disappear at night and not to enter the sea casually. It didn't mention any other dangers. Of course, it might also be the blessing of good luck. She had been safe all along this way and hadn't even encountered any sharks. 2 hours later, Ling finally arrived safely at her construction island. After securing the boat, she stepped onto her small island. For a moment, she felt like she had returned home. Phew, I'm finally back. And Ling entered the cabin first, turned on the eternal lamp, then lit the iron stove, added charcoal, and took a burning piece of wood as a torch, going back outside. The night brought a chill, and Ling had a feeling that the temperature difference between day and night here was getting bigger and bigger. The days were getting hotter, and the nights were starting to get colder. Outside the cabin, a 4-square-meter shower stall sat quietly. It was the reward the system had given her today. Yes, for the toiletries, they were thoughtfully placed inside the shower stall. It was a square shower room, and although the area wasn't very large, it had everything from a bathtub to a showerhead. There was even a sink with a mirror at the entrance, incredibly thoughtful. Looking at the glass walls on all sides, Ling had an indescribable feeling. Wait, whose shower stall is transparent? Looking up, at the very top was a square water tank that needed to be filled manually, with a square lampshade hanging in the middle. Ling tried pressing the switch, and the light instantly came on, shining through the walls and onto the island outside. There were also 2 buttons next to the switch. She tried pressing one, and the surrounding walls instantly fogged up, becoming opaque. I see. There were 2 modes. One was a one-way mirror, where she could see outside but the outside couldn't see inside, and the other was a fully shielded mode. So, this is for me to watch the sea while taking a bath? Ling had a strange expression on her face. Going outside, on top of the shower stall were 2 solar panels facing each other, without any blind spots, to heat the water inside and provide electricity. This thing was probably the most high-tech item on Ling's island right now. Perfect, I can finally take a shower anytime, anywhere. It's just that filling it with water for the first time might be a bit troublesome. Ling returned to the cabin, prepared to boil water, and started preparing her dinner. Chapter 47, Nature's Porter. While waiting, she didn't forget to check her trade orders. The current amount of materials was simply explosive. Ling seriously suspected that if she took out all these materials now, they would crush her small cabin. Fortunately, the spatial storage box had a high limit, 32 slots, with a maximum of 100 items per slot. Ling temporarily took out the rare materials from the box to prevent them from occupying slots, and then began to claim the materials obtained from the trades. Trade acquisition: wood 560, scrap iron 318, thatch 528, iron nails 488, plastic 220, charcoal 422. This was the bounty from nearly 1,000 bananas from the banana grove, simply terrifying at least for a while. Ling wouldn't have to worry about these materials. After organizing the materials, the water was almost boiling. Ling decomposed a cod, threw it into the pot, then opened a packet of instant vegetable soup and added it in. This stuff came with its own seasoning and also had some dehydrated vegetables, very convenient. There was just 1 squid left, so Ling grilled and ate it as well. In the chilly, dark night, Ling drank the cod and vegetable soup, ate the grilled squid, and warmed herself by the stove. She quickly warmed up. After finishing dinner, Ling continued to boil water, planning to add some water to the shower stall. Fresh water resources are still too scarce. Boiling seawater directly wasn't suitable for drinking or bathing, and distillation was too troublesome. Ling pondered. It seems like taking a shower today is out of the question. If these freshwater resources were only for drinking, it would be completely sufficient. But for domestic use, it was severely lacking, unless she got an upgrade card now to directly upgrade the seawater filtration device. Plastic bottles. Ling looked at the mineral water bottles, thinking. They seemed to hold too little water, only 1 liter for every 2 bottles. 1 slot in the backpack held 50 bottles, which was only 25 liters of water. Moreover, trading a large number of plastic bottles was also troublesome. She opened the building module to see if there were any other tools that could be used to hold water. Plastic bucket. Holds rice, noodles, water, storage, running with a bucket, omnipotent. Required materials, plastic *5. Crafting grants 1 point. There really is. Ling immediately crafted one. It was a simple, unadorned red plastic bucket, about the size she had imagined. This kind of bucket generally had a capacity of 15 to 20 liters, almost equivalent to 50 bottles of mineral water. Now Ling needed to test whether water-filled plastic buckets could be stacked in the spatial backpack. If they could, she could collect a large amount of fresh water after landing on the island tomorrow. Seawater-filled plastic bucket *1. Ling crafted another plastic bucket, filled it with seawater, and the quantity stacked. Great. Now I don't have to worry about fresh water anymore. After testing, as long as the plastic buckets contained the same liquid, they could be stacked. But a bucket filled with seawater and a bucket filled with fresh water couldn't be stacked, and the same applied to empty buckets. And Ling directly crafted 30 plastic buckets. Don't ask why not 50, it was because she didn't have enough plastic. This fresh water was completely enough to fill the shower stall's water tank and have some left over. She stored the 30 plastic buckets in her backpack in advance, preparing for tomorrow's second landing. Ling went to the edge of the island to check her fishing net and found that she hadn't caught a single fish, so she didn't even bother to collect the net, leaving it hanging there. Those scattered materials no longer interested her, unless it was a wooden crate. This showed that Ling's good luck blessing had a certain range. At least after she left the island, it didn't affect the fishing net, otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible to not catch a single fish. Since I can't take a shower, I won't bother changing clothes. Ling tidied up and then began a simple wash. Looking at the crude wooden bed, she even wondered what she would do if the weather turned cold one day. Not to mention a quilt, she didn't even have a blanket. After washing her socks and hanging them by the stove, and boiling another pot of water, Ling seemed to have discovered another advanced use for the plastic bucket. That's right, a foot bath. There was nothing more comfortable than this. What? You ask if this plastic bucket would still be used to hold water. Please, Ling didn't have athlete's foot. It wouldn't get infected with fungus. After a busy night, her exhaustion was swept away, and she was ready to go to bed. Her current development was entering a peak period, and Ling didn't have time to watch other survivors chat. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, just as the sky began to brighten, Ling got up. The charcoal in the stove was still burning, but it was about to go out. She washed up briefly and ate a sandwich. After finishing breakfast, Ling pushed open the wooden door. A gust of cool wind made her shiver involuntarily. The weather seemed to be getting colder and colder. She skillfully rotated the pendant around her neck, and the pale golden cube began to spin rapidly. Glancing down at the pattern above the grooves, it was a rooster's head, a brand new blessing. Obtained blessing pendant bonus. Winner chicken dinner, God's right hand, gathering probability triggers 1-10x drops. Remaining time, 18 hours 0 minutes 0 seconds. As expected, whatever I need, I get. Ling was excited. It seemed that today, not only would the freshwater resources yield a bountiful harvest, but the mineral resources would also see a bumper crop. She put on her backpack, went to the wooden boat. The coordinates on the navigation locator were still there, and after pulling up the anchor, she decisively set off. It was just 6 o'clock in the morning, still early. Ling aimed to explore the entire resource island within the day. The journey was smooth, and 2 hours later, Ling arrived at the island again. Because she also needed to collect fresh water, she didn't choose to dock the boat on the other side of the island, but instead stopped at yesterday's location. Soon, Ling arrived at the stream again, took out all the plastic buckets, and began filling them one by one. I don't produce water, I'm just nature's porter. 30 buckets of water. Using her ability, she collected them all in less than 20 minutes and put them into her backpack. These buckets held at least 500 liters of water, enough even if she luxuriously used the bathtub. Done. Ling put on her backpack and continued towards the other side of the island. The spatial backpack was really useful. Otherwise, there was no way she could carry so much water. Chapter 48. Butchering a bull. A meaty harvest. Ling quickly arrived back at the cave, casually picking up a stone and tossing it inside. This time, no swarm of bats flew out. She didn't know where they had gone. She bypassed the small hill and continued forward. Soon the surrounding vegetation began to thin out, and the terrain underfoot started to resemble a desert. For such a small island, there were quite a few terrain features. During this time, Ling also saw some small animals. Squirrels in the woods, rabbits in the grass, and birds in the sky. These animals were too small, and Ling had no hunting skills. Basically, the moment she spotted them, they also noticed her and scurried away. Hunting these small animals with just her bow and arrows would be difficult. She would have to be very patient and quiet. She couldn't be bothered with these animals. Without preservation methods, getting the meat wouldn't be of much use. More importantly, she still had a lot of uneaten meat in her storage. Ling's goal was to encounter a large animal, ideally. Less trouble and less effort. But just as she thought she was about to enter the barren terrain, the surrounding vegetation started to thicken again. It was strange. The ground was no longer a mixture of hard sand and stone, but had become somewhat soft, dry mud. Given the temperature of the sun during the day on the island, the ground shouldn't be this moist. And Ling's eyes scanned the distance, and she spotted a black bull grazing on the plants. Her eyes instantly lit up, and she took her deer antler bow from her back, placing her pistol in her hoodie pocket beforehand. She hadn't expected to actually find a large animal. If she could hunt this bull, her meat supply would see a significant increase. Although it couldn't be preserved for long, she could just trade it away. She couldn't just let it rot, and Ling carefully approached the bull, afraid of making any noise that might startle it. Estimating the range of her deer antler bow, she felt that her current position was suitable for a shot. The black bull continued grazing, completely unaware of the hunter quietly approaching. Drawing the bow and knocking the arrow in one fluid motion, and Ling closed one eye and tilted her head, carefully aiming. She didn't have perfect accuracy now. If the first arrow missed, it would definitely frighten the bull. If it were a docile bull, it would likely be scared off. But looking at the pair of menacing horns on the black bull's head, she knew this guy wasn't to be trifled with. Whoosh! The wooden arrow flew off the string in a straight line, piercing the black bull's body. But due to the distance and the wooden arrowhead, the power against the thick-skinned bull was greatly reduced. And Ling estimated that the arrow had only penetrated a few centimeters. It was far from inflicting a fatal wound. Moo! The black bull roared angrily and immediately raised its head, spotting the enemy who had attacked it. Its eyes turned bloodshot, and like a Spanish bull seeing a red cloth, it went completely berserk. Snort! The bull let out a heavy snort, pawed the ground with its hooves, and the next second, charged towards Ling. The terrain was flat, and there was nowhere for her to hide. Of course, Ling had never intended to hide. After experiencing a series of supernatural events, she wasn't even afraid of those strange monsters, so how could she be afraid of a mere wild bull? Ling calmly drew her bow and knocked another arrow. As the target got closer, her accuracy increased. In a moment, 3 more arrows pierced the black bull's body. The pained bull became even more frenzied. Seeing that the deer antler bow couldn't inflict significant damage, Ling frowned. Am I going to have to waste a bullet on this bull? She didn't want to waste a bullet on it. Wait, why am I using a bow? Ling put away the deer antler bow and pulled 2 wooden arrows from her backpack. With a flick of her fingers, the 2 arrows levitated. As she swung her arm forward, they shot out. Thwack! The sound of arrows piercing flesh came, and at the same time, she quickly dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the bull's charge. Under the control of her ability, it was as if she were using her own hands, very easy to use and incredibly accurate. She knew her ability was only at the basic level and wasn't that powerful. Even if the arrows pierced the bull, it wouldn't be any different from the deer antler bow. However, with the high precision, she could use her ability to accurately hit the bull's most vulnerable spots, its eyes. Blinded, the black bull posed much less of a threat to Ling now. It was at her mercy. After a considerable struggle, Ling finally finished off the black bull. Through her testing, she found that the deer antler bow was still more powerful than using her ability directly. But her ability was accurate. But then, as her ability improved, wouldn't the perfect accuracy blessing become useless in the future? Now wasn't the time to think about that. Ling first decomposed the wild bull. Obtained beef 50, bull tendon 1, bull bone 10, bull hide 1, bull horn *2. The black bull on the ground was instantly dismembered, blood and internal organs spilling everywhere. Although these organs didn't display any information, they could actually be taken back as well. The decomposed beef was bloody. She didn't pick it up with her hands, but just estimated the weight visually. One piece should be several kilograms. An adult couldn't even finish one piece of beef in a meal. This amount of meat, if it could be stored, she didn't know how long it would last her. Ling wasn't fond of offal, so she directly packed the decomposed bull materials into her backpack. As for the rest, she simply left it. After resting for a moment, she picked up her backpack and continued on. Arriving at the spot where the bull had been grazing, the leaves looked familiar. When she saw the broken potatoes next to them, Ling suddenly realized, there are potatoes here. This was the first time she had seen fresh vegetables since arriving in this ocean world, besides the packaged food, meat, and fish. Great, Now she could have a balanced diet of meat and vegetables. And as a girl who loved cleanliness, how could she dig these potatoes with her hands? It was time for her ability to come in handy again. Wait, why am I referring to myself as a girl? And Ling felt her thoughts becoming strange, subjectively thinking of herself as a girl. This wasn't a good sign. Chapter 49. Absurd mining efficiency. After half an hour of busy work, and Ling obtained a total of 35 potatoes. She felt there might be other vegetables nearby, and immediately packed them up to start searching. Currently, fresh vegetables and meat should have the highest prices, but there were probably few survivors who could cook them. Even so, these were definitely hot commodities, and she wouldn't have any trouble selling them. The surrounding trees were all hardwoods. There weren't any fruit trees. She wasn't short of wood now, so chopping them down wouldn't be very meaningful. Ling began to wander around the area where she had found the potatoes. Soon, she found some seedlings bearing red peppers. These could be used as seasoning, so naturally, she couldn't miss them. In the end, she obtained 20 peppers. Besides these, Ling didn't find any other crops. It was possible that there weren't any more on the island. But she wasn't discouraged. Today's harvest had already been enormous. She continued on, preparing to start mining as she walked. A protruding clod of earth tripped her, nearly causing her to fall. Loamy soil discovered can be collected with a pickaxe. Loamy soil was also very useful. Although Ling couldn't use it at the moment, since she had encountered it, she couldn't miss it. Gathering multiplier triggered. 4. Obtained loamy soil *2. Gathering multiplier triggered. 6. Obtained loamy soil *3. Gathering multiplier triggered. 8. Obtained loamy soil *4. A message popped up with each swing of her pickaxe. A series of messages appeared, and Ling finally understood the effect of her new blessing. Although the blessing was powerful, she looked helplessly at her pickaxe. This thing was garbage, with only 0.5 efficiency. The materials she dug out, after being multiplied, were still halved. She had already decided that before landing on the next resource island, she would definitely reinforce this broken pickaxe. After finally obtaining a total of 34 loamy soil, Ling left the area and continued forward. Time quickly reached noon. The scorching sun beat down directly on her head, and the strong ultraviolet rays assaulted her skin. Ling was already drenched in sweat. At this time, right at noon, the weather was scorching hot. She had to hide under the shade of a tree, planning to rest for a while. If she worked in this weather, she was afraid she would suffer from heat stroke and die before she finished mining. Although the temperature wasn't low before, it wasn't nearly as hot as it was now. She even felt that the current temperature had reached 37 or 38 degrees Celsius. The chocolate in her bag had already melted, sticking to the wrapper. She took a couple of bites and casually threw it away, taking out 2 sealed packs of braised chicken legs. This was her lunch today. She would make do with a simple meal on the island, but she would have to eat a good meal after returning to her construction island in the evening. After finishing the chicken legs, Ling took out a bottle of sugar-free cola. These were the food she had obtained before entering Survival Island, and she had been reluctant to eat them. Now that conditions were better, she naturally had to enjoy herself a bit. Glug, glug. The bubbles in her mouth stimulated her taste buds. She stopped after a couple of sips. As expected, I still don't like sugar-free. After a simple lunch and a short rest, Ling continued on her way. She could already see the sea at the end of her vision, which meant she was about to reach the barren area. After mining these minerals, if there was time, she would check the island again and then end her exploration of the resource island and return. Iron ore discovered can be collected with a pickaxe. Seeing the system prompt, Ling looked at the dark stone at her feet. Only a small part of it was exposed. Most of it should be buried underground. It seems this is iron ore. She immediately started mining using her ability, but after one swing of the pickaxe, she was dumbfounded. HP -1. The iron ore's health points only decreased a tiny bit, visibly. If she didn't look closely, she wouldn't even be able to tell. Who knew how much health this iron ore had, and how much it would drop when mined out? Mining ore was completely different from loamy soil. The latter dropped immediately, meaning whatever amount she mined was what she got. The former, however, dropped all at once after its health reached 0. This meant that until the iron ore's health reached 0, Ling wouldn't get a single piece of iron ore. So tricky? Ling raised an eyebrow slightly. She felt that at her current level of development, She wasn't ready for such advanced materials. But again, since she was already here, she had to mine this iron ore. Clink, clink, clink. After an hour of uninterrupted hammering, the iron ore's health finally reached 0. With a crack, the iron ore under her feet finally shattered. Gathering multiplier triggered. 5. Obtained iron ore *25. 1 iron ore originally only drops 10 ore? And Ling was clearly dissatisfied with the result. She had worked hard for an hour, and if it weren't for the blessing, she would have only gotten 5. I can't keep wasting time on this. And Ling immediately gave up on the iron ore. Her current technology couldn't mine this efficiently. She could only see if there were any other ores around. Unsurprisingly, and Ling found coal again nearby. This time it wasn't in a dark cave, so her mining efficiency was much faster. Coal was essential for heating. It was so hot during the day and so cold at night. Who knew what other tricks the system might pull? In short, any resources she found, she would take them all. After 2 hours of mining, she had cleared out all the coal in the surrounding area. Compared to iron ore, it was much faster to mine. Coupled with the blessing's random multiplier, she obtained a total of 90 coal. Of course, and Ling also found another ore during this time. Copper ore. What made her speechless was that hitting this thing with her simple pickaxe didn't even make a dent in its health. Logically, iron ore should be harder than copper ore, but here, copper ore was clearly rarer and harder than iron ore, which suddenly made sense to her. Besides these, there were no other ores. Forget it, it's the first resource island I've encountered. It's normal for resources to be limited. And Ling left the desert area and continued to explore the island. Soon, she crossed the island and arrived at the other side of the beach. But this beach had many smooth stones, which weren't present at the location where she had landed. Ling curiously walked to the seaside, picked up a stone, and examined it. It was palm-sized, oval-shaped, like a pebble. Flint can be used to craft some early-stage equipment, usually found by the sea. It's actually a material? Chapter 50. Return to Construction Island. And Ling was surprised that an ordinary stone was actually a material. She looked along the coast and found quite a bit of flint. She immediately started gathering it along the beach. There was a piece of flint every few meters, some buried in the sand, some under the waves. She effortlessly picked them all up using her ability. After 2 hours of intermittent walking, and Ling had collected 65 pieces of flint. After that, it became difficult to find any more, so she decided not to waste any more time. Instead, she wandered around the island, seeing if she could find any other useful materials. She spent another hour circling the island, using her bow and arrows to hunt a few birds, but found nothing else of use. Ling stored the 20 feathers she obtained in her backpack. As for the meager amount of bird meat, she listed it on the exchange, trading it for feathers. Some survivors might not necessarily want feathers, but bird meat was more appealing. Ling glanced at the time. It was past 4 in the afternoon, and it was about time to return to her island. After all, the journey would take another 2 hours, and she didn't want to return in the dark again. Just in time to see what new devices I can unlock with the materials I've gathered. She walked towards her wooden boat with her backpack, thinking that her island's technology might see an upgrade after this. Arriving at the boat and skillfully raising the anchor, and Ling used her ability to row back towards her construction island. Speaking of which, she had been using her ability for so long, yet there was no sign of it breaking through. Shouldn't it upgrade with increased proficiency and frequent use? If it couldn't be upgraded, what was the point of having levels? Moreover, and Ling's current ability was only helpful in daily life. If she relied entirely on it for combat, her assessment was not as good as the perfect accuracy blessing and reinforcement cards. 2 hours later, as the sun set, the seawater reflected the golden light, and the small wooden boat slowly returned to the small island. Ling quickly dropped anchor, secured her boat, and jumped onto the island. The first thing to do was to sort out the materials in her backpack and fill the shower stall's water tank to as expected. There were 8 buckets left, which she stored in the storage box. She couldn't just leave them outside. Actually, I can make another trip tomorrow, at least to refill the fresh water, Ling muttered, stroking her chin as she looked at the empty plastic buckets. Then she went inside and sorted and processed all the materials. Opening the building module, there were indeed many new structures, which made her eyes light up. Flint axe. Chopping efficiency 0.6, slightly stronger than the scrap iron axe. Required materials: flint 2, wood 1, rope *1. Grants 1 point. Flint spear, essential for hunting. Damage depends on the user's strength. Average penetration. Required materials: wood 1, flint 1. Grants 1 point. Flint pickaxe. Grants 1 point. Bullhorn bow. Grants 1 point. In addition, there were flower beds, flower pots, ordinary iron axe, ordinary iron pickaxe, ordinary iron sword, bow, shield, spear, knife, and a series of other newly unlocked special equipment. The former could be crafted directly using a workbench, while the latter, whether loamy soil or iron ore, needed to be processed, and Ling didn't currently have the building for that. Based on her gaming experience, this building was most likely a furnace, and such buildings usually required blueprints, meaning a building card to unlock. As for how to obtain a building card, well, she would have to rely on luck and try opening crates someday. Although many things have been unlocked, there are very few that can be crafted directly. Ling was in a dilemma, starting to think about crafting these craftable items first, just to earn some points. Bullhorn bow. She tried it out and found that its power was similar to the deer antler bow, not much of an upgrade. She would leave it at home to gather dust, or sell it if she couldn't find another use for it. Next were the 3 flint tools. With an efficiency of 0.6, it was obvious they were stronger than her previous simple pickaxe and axe, so she naturally replaced them. It seems I'll have to go to the island again tomorrow. The flint pickaxe should be a bit more powerful, so mining might not be so strenuous. I'll also replenish the fresh water. Ling planned her next steps. She would sell the 3 extra pieces of equipment and bring her plastic buckets up to a full stack of 50. After doing all this, it was almost dark. She lit the stove and started preparing dinner. Cooking was easy, but Ling had neither seasonings nor staple foods. She opened the trading module again, but after searching for a while, she didn't find anyone selling seasonings. This was a bit tricky. She preferred to eat the perishable food first. Although she still had self-heating rice and canned food in her storage, those could be preserved for a long time and could be used in emergencies. With so many people, she didn't believe no one had any. It was just that no one was selling them. Ling opened the chat module and shouted, "Anyone have seasonings and staple foods? I'll trade fresh beef." Anyway, she had too much beef. With her appetite, it would take her more than a month to finish it, and leaving it there would only lead to spoilage. At this moment, this was the biggest temptation for all survivors. Beef? Where did you get beef? Damn, I'm still eating compressed biscuits, and you have so much beef you're selling it? Comparing yourself to others will only make you angry. Life is so unfair. Boss, I worship you. Please give me a steak. I like it raw. I'm an idol. I can sing, dance, and rap. Can you give me some beef? I'm starving. Get lost, sissy. At this time, Ling received a lot of private messages from unfamiliar survivors. Undoubtedly, they were the ones who had staple foods and seasonings. Compared to having seasonings but no ingredients, they wanted a simple and straightforward piece of roast beef. Of course, a portion of beef weighed about 3 kilograms, and even all the seasonings combined wouldn't be enough to exchange for a portion of beef. Therefore, Ling planned to cut a portion of beef and sell it separately. No knife? No problem. The newly crafted flint axe hadn't been used yet and was clean, so she used it to cut the beef. Chapter 51. A Sumptuous Dinner. A piece of beef, after being scanned by the light screen ring, had a standard weight of 3 kilograms, or 6 jin. Ling traded just one portion of beef for a variety of seasonings and staple foods. Rice 15 kg 1, garlic 20, salt 5, soy sauce 1, scallions 5, cooking oil 5 L1, ginger *3. With these seasonings, she could finally cook a proper meal. The only pity was that she only had one stove, meaning she couldn't cook rice and dishes simultaneously. However, she was confident that her living conditions would improve in the future. Ling began to busy herself, not forgetting to turn on the shower cabin and heat the fresh water inside. After dinner, she planned to take a good shower. She hadn't showered since returning from the survival island. Although it had only been 2 days, the days were so hot that she sweated a lot. This made her body very uncomfortable, and her cleanliness value decreased rapidly. An hour later, a delicious dinner was ready. Braised beef with potatoes, pan-fried cod, stir-fried bamboo shoots with pork, sea eagle soup, and a steaming bowl of rice. Of course, canned fruit and soda were also essential. 3 dishes, 1 soup, fruit, and drinks. A table full of dishes was laid out, and Ling sat down in a chair to enjoy it. This was the most sumptuous dinner she had ever eaten. Fortunately, she had become independent early and mastered life skills like cooking and laundry early on. Otherwise, not being able to cook would have been a big problem. Is this what happiness feels like? Finally, I don't have to eat instant food anymore. Ling finished 2 full bowls of rice, patted her full belly, and leaned back in her chair with a satisfied look. Ugh, I'm so full. During her break, she idly looked at the chat among the survivors. It had to be said that the scanning function on the light screen ring greatly satisfied the vanity of many survivors. Ling tried scanning her leftover food, steaming braised beef with potatoes. Immediately, information appeared in the dialog box. By clicking send, it could be seen by other survivors, complete with a picture. However, Ling didn't have any intention of showing off to these survivors. Her purpose in paying attention to the chat module was simply to see if she had fallen behind others in her development. Now it seemed that not only had she not fallen behind, but she was actually ahead of almost all the other survivors. Seeing this result, Ling felt relieved. At least I'm not the worst one. After letting her food digest, she planned to go outside to the shower cabin to bathe and then end the day's schedule. The sea breeze outside the wooden house made her feel a bit cold. It wasn't suitable to wash her hair at night. Her waist-length white hair would take a while to dry. Sure enough, even washing hair was so troublesome for women. Turning on the indoor lights and setting the mode to opaque, she didn't have a habit of showering while looking at the sea. It didn't feel safe at all. Moreover, it was the middle of the night. What was there to see? As the bathtub filled with water, she also began to wash herself. Her clothes slowly slid down her smooth skin to her feet, and her fair, slender legs, without a trace of excess fat, stepped into the bathtub. The water temperature was just right. Ling slowly sat down, then lay back in the bathtub. Steam rose upwards, and the small shower cabin quickly filled with mist, while the 4 glass walls began to condense with water vapor. She stirred the hot water, letting it cascade over her skin, the droplets sliding down her smooth, jade-like shoulders. Ling lay quietly in the bathtub, her eyes closed, as if only at this moment did time truly belong to her. After showering, she washed her clothes, including her shoes and socks. Because the previously rewarded clothes were a set, which surprisingly included shoes, they were the kind she hated the most, short for pig kidney shoes. Of course, there were 3 different styles, 2 of which were proper black leather shoes. After finishing all this, Ling picked up the 3 sets of clothes and looked at them, planning to choose one to wear. However, it was too cool. It would be fine during the day, but she might feel cold at night. The first set, a white shirt, a blue and white plaid pleated skirt, mid-calf white socks, and those very pig kidney shoes. The second set, all khaki, with a bit of dark brown stripes and a pair of white stockings. The third set was even more outrageous, a black ensemble, but with a small jacket. This set should be the warmest, but it came with black stockings. Black and white, each to their own. Everyone has different preferences. Ling personally preferred black a bit more, but she didn't know about others. Although her heart was pounding, as someone with a male mindset, wearing these clothes still felt somewhat embarrassing. Even though she was actually a girl now. Therefore, Ling chose the first set without hesitation. It felt the most normal to her. Of course, she also changed into the matching underwear. It feels strangely comfortable to wear. She didn't expect these shoes that were so ugly to men to be quite comfortable. Instantly, her opinion of these shoes improved. The skirt was too short, only reaching her knees, which made her very uncomfortable. Leaving the shower cabin, she felt the sea breeze directly up her skirt, making her feel very insecure. Although this pleated skirt looked like a skirt on the surface, it actually had a split inside, just like pants, which served as safety shorts. Even so, it was still a skirt, and for Ling, who was wearing a skirt for the first time, it was simply mortifying. Hurrying back to the wooden house, she prepared to go to sleep. It was already late. The cowhide left over from making the horn bow was still plentiful, so she simply used it to make a bed cover. This added a bit of comfort to the simple wooden bed. Lying in bed, Ling checked her points. She currently had 74. There were only 4 days left until she entered the survival island. If her blessing for the next 2 days wasn't extremely lucky, she wouldn't be able to explore the supply island. Unless the simple wooden boat could be upgraded again during this period. She had to find a way to absorb these supplies and convert them into helpful tools or equipment. After all, the first survival island was called a beginner island, and it was already so dangerous. And Ling couldn't imagine how difficult the later survival islands would be. She couldn't always expect to encounter helpers. If she met some unscrupulous survivors, that would be a big problem. And Ling's thoughts wandered a bit, and her eyelids gradually grew heavy. Finally, she slowly drifted off to sleep in the silent night. The cold sea breeze continued to blow across the ocean surface. Chapter 52. A storm is coming. The next morning, Ling woke up early. She rotated the pendant on her chest, and the light golden cube began to spin rapidly. Received blessing pendant bonus. Great luck and great profit. Hand of God, gathering probability triggered 1-10x drop. Remaining time, 18 hours 03 minutes 21 seconds. Sure enough, this pendant isn't random at all, but provides the optimal solution based on my current needs. And Ling had already discovered its pattern. She could even use the daily blessing to predict what would happen today. For example, physically challenged but strong-willed would indicate an action related to physical strength. Deadshot was likely related to combat. For breakfast, Ling prepared a pack of sandwiches for herself and made a cup of instant coffee in a wooden bowl. After quickly finishing her meal, she began packing up, preparing to land on the island again. This time, with the tools she had, she was sure to harvest a lot of ore. She also made sure to completely replenish her freshwater supply. While other survivors were still worrying about freshwater, Ling had even started using it to take baths. The task was simple, probably taking about half a day to complete, but just in case, she still brought lunch. Coincidentally, today was the last day for the Supply Island exploration reward, so it was best not to waste the opportunity. Ling raised the anchor and once again set off for the Supply Island in her small wooden boat. Arriving again at this familiar island, this time she parked her small boat on the side of the island where the ore units were, to save time. After securing the boat, Ling landed on the island and began mining. To test the power of the flint pickaxe, she first located the copper ore from yesterday. Clang! With a heavy blow, the copper ore indeed lost some health, but the rate of health loss was similar to the effect of hitting iron, or with a scrap iron pickaxe. In other words, even with her flint pickaxe, it would still take at least an hour to mine copper ore. Forget it. I'll do that last. I might not even need this stuff right now. Ling thought for a moment and chose to give up. She hadn't even upgraded her iron ore equipment yet, so her primary goal was naturally iron ore. If there was enough iron ore on the last day, she wouldn't consider copper ore at all. If she finished mining early, then she would try to mine some copper ore. The distribution of these ores was very uneven, scattered here and there, requiring careful searching. As far as she could see, Ling couldn't determine how much iron ore there was or whether she could finish it all in one morning. Time flew by, and soon it was noon. The scorching sun overhead was still intense, forcing Ling to stop and rest for a while. Fortunately, she was dressed relatively coolly today and didn't sweat as much as yesterday. In the morning, 4 hours' time, she had pretty much cleared out all the iron ore in the nearby area. There might be a few she hadn't found, but she decided not to bother. In total, she obtained iron ore 175 and lust 66. The harvest was decent, mainly relying on the blessing. Otherwise, 8 iron ores in 4 hours would only yield less than 50 in total, not to mention she also dug up 2 lusts during that time. Under the shade of a tree, Ling placed her backpack on the ground and sat on it to avoid dirtying her clothes. She took out the food she had prepared beforehand and began to eat her lunch. Originally, she had planned to finish this supply island in one morning. Although she had indeed finished, she now wanted to use the afternoon to try and mine some copper ore. Otherwise, she felt like she would be letting down the 30 points she spent to locate this supply island. After finishing a pack of sandwiches and a sausage, Ling wiped her mouth with a tissue, stood up, and prepared to continue working. She looked up at the sky, the dazzling sunlight blinding her. The sun seemed to be still in the same spot, not moving at all. Can't waste any time. The island will sink at night. Ling decisively began working again under the scorching sun. Of course, she wasn't foolish enough to let the sun directly shine on her skin. What if her fair skin got tanned? Ling wove a straw hat from leaves and vines and put it on her head. She also had several wooden planks floating above her head, arranged to form a square shadow, perfectly blocking the direct sunlight. As for mining, she planned to dig directly with her hands, using her ability to control the wooden planks floating above. As expected, it took about an hour to mine 1 copper ore deposit. Triggered collection multiplier, 10, obtained copper or *60. Holy moly! Ling had been mining for so long, and this was the first time she had triggered a 10-fold drop. The highest before was only 8 times. This is too awesome. Just 1 copper ore deposit directly dropped 60 pieces. This wasted hour was totally worth it. First, great luck and great profit. Obtained special reward, 1 random item card. Ling had almost forgotten that her blessing also had an achievement system. It was the familiar silver-white card. She immediately looked at the image on the front. A pair of white shark slippers, which looked quite cute. Slippers? Not bad. I don't have any. Ling put the card away. The accumulation method for each blessing was different. It seemed that the accumulation condition for the Great Luck and Great Profit achievement was to trigger the maximum multiplier. Currently, Ling knew that both Deadshot and Good Things Come in Pairs were the simplest, with the accumulation of times triggering the achievement. As for Physically Challenged but Strong-Willed and Extreme Luck, they hadn't been triggered yet, and the specific conditions were unknown. The light golden cube of the pendant had 6 sides, meaning there were 6 types of blessings. So far, only 5 had appeared, and 1 was unknown. Since it's a blessing pendant, there shouldn't be any debuffs. Thinking of this, Ling felt relieved and continued mining. Triggered collection multiplier, 1. Obtained copper or *6. Okay, so that's how you want to play it. Ling laughed in exasperation. After just getting a maximum multiplier, she immediately got a minimum multiplier. This hour was completely wasted. At this moment, a sea breeze blew past, and Ling suddenly felt a coolness. She looked up at the sea and was suddenly stunned. The sky had darkened. She immediately removed the wooden planks above her head and found that the scorching sun, which had just been hanging overhead, had long disappeared, completely obscured by dark clouds. Is this the prelude to a storm? Ling dropped the wooden planks, packed her backpack, and prepared to go to the stream to collect fresh water. After collecting water, she would immediately leave the supply island. A storm was coming, and she couldn't stay here any longer. Otherwise, it would be uncertain whether she could safely return to Construction Island with this small wooden boat. She didn't want to be trapped here by the storm and sink to the bottom of the sea along with the supply island. Chapter 53, Drenched? They say the weather at sea is unpredictable. I believe it now. Ling jogged to the stream. She needed to quickly fill the 42 plastic buckets. The sea breeze grew stronger, carrying a chill, like late autumn, causing goosebumps to rise involuntarily on her skin. Holding her backpack in one hand, she pulled out an empty plastic bucket with the other, filled it using her ability, and stored it back in the backpack, repeating the process. Within 10 minutes, Ling had filled all the plastic buckets with water. She had originally planned to mine more copper ore in the afternoon, but now it seemed there was no time in the future. She'd have to be more mindful of the weather when searching for resource islands. Ling slung her backpack over her shoulder and hurried back towards her small wooden boat. Half an hour later, she finally returned to the boat, promptly raised anchor, and left the resource island. Along the way, she didn't dare to stop, fearing the downpour that threatened the sky. The wind on the sea surface was getting stronger and stronger, and the originally calm sea had become turbulent. Waves surged, and Ling's small wooden boat was like a lone leaf on this vast ocean, about to be swallowed by the monstrous waves. The sky grew darker, and the sea outside the boat was black, the result of light unable to penetrate the depths and being completely refracted. The sea here was bottomless, and Ling experienced the sensation of thalassophobia for the first time. The feeling hadn't been so obvious on a sunny day, or perhaps she hadn't had time to observe carefully, and Ling quickened her rowing pace. She felt the storm was imminent. Plop, 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 plop. Large raindrops fell on the wooden canopy, making crisp sounds, escalating into a downpour within seconds. Most of the journey was already behind her, and she would soon return to Construction Island. Her biggest worry was that a surging wave would capsize her small boat. Ling really didn't want to fall into the sea at this point. Logically, her ability should allow her to control her body to some extent, but her experiments had failed, perhaps due to her weak ability. Currently, all she could do was diligently speed up her rowing and pray for divine protection. She didn't want to be the first survivor to drown. Oh shoot, the rain is too heavy, and the boat is filling with water. Ling had been focused on rowing faster, and only now noticed the accumulating rainwater in the boat. She quickly took out the plastic buckets filled with fresh water from her backpack, poured the water into the sea, and started scooping out the rainwater with the buckets. She continued to maintain the boat's forward momentum with her ability, but due to the strong winds and waves, its speed slowed significantly, and she constantly risked deviating from her course. Ling had to keep a close eye on the coordinates on the navigation device. Standing at the bow, her clothes were quickly soaked through by the rain. Her white shirt clung to her body, becoming somewhat translucent, revealing her alluring figure. She scooped out the seawater as quickly as possible, and after clearing most of it, she quickly ducked under the wooden canopy. Fortunately, her boat had a canopy that could reduce the amount of rain entering and provide some shelter. She shuddered to think what would happen to an ordinary small boat caught in a storm at sea. This was already nerve-wracking enough. Thankfully, fate favored her, sparing her from becoming the first survivor to drown. Although the surrounding waves were strong, no massive waves threatened to capsize her boat. The outline of Construction Island appeared in Ling's vision. Victory was in sight. She increased her speed and finally returned to her island. In this situation, she couldn't leave the boat anchored in the sea. The boat would sink if the cabin filled with water. And Ling, drenched by the rain, stood on the island and, with the help of her ability, managed to pull most of the boat ashore with great effort. After securing it with the anchor, it was safe from sinking. Once this was done, she hurried back to her wooden house. She checked the roof. Thankfully, the previously reinforced wooden house showed no signs of leaking, which put her mind at ease. The chimney of the wooden house also had a small wooden canopy to prevent rainwater from entering, a thoughtful design. Otherwise, even if the wooden house didn't leak, a constantly flooded chimney would be a huge problem. I'm completely soaked. Ling threw her backpack on the ground, lit the stove, added firewood, and then took off all her clothes. Standing naked in the wooden house, she took out the slipper item card and clicked use. Perhaps because she had just been drenched, she didn't feel cold at all. She needed to take a shower and wash her clothes. The shower cabin was right next to the wooden house, just a few steps away. At this point, being completely wet, she didn't care and walked naked to the shower cabin. After a quick rinse and washing her clothes, Ling stood in front of the mirror, drying her hair with a towel. Damn, I forgot. Ling suddenly realized how she was supposed to get back to the wooden house. Was she going to get soaked again after just showering? Looking through the glass at the sea outside, the rain seemed even heavier than before, showing no signs of letting up. However, the waves around the island seemed calm. Just now, she had been worried about a rogue wave sweeping across her island. Clearly, this wasn't just a matter of luck. The system was intentionally protecting the survivors' construction islands. Otherwise, in this terrible weather, countless survivors could be swept out to sea from their islands. I hope this storm doesn't last too long, Ling sighed. But then another thought occurred to her. Since her ability was to control objects, similar to chi or telekinetic energy, could it be used to block the rain? She went to the door of the shower cabin and used her ability. In the next second, the raindrops above her head eerily stopped in midair. It actually works. A look of surprise crossed Ling's face. Although the area was small, it was enough to cover her body. Stepping out of the shower cabin, she finally felt a chill. She quickly returned to the wooden house and went to the stove. She certainly didn't want to catch a cold. Taking out clothes from the wardrobe, Ling chose the black set. She didn't care anymore, at least this outfit would be warmer. Today, or perhaps for the next few days, she wouldn't leave her island. Fishnets it is. No one's here anyway. What am I afraid of? Chapter 54. The Food Crate. I always feel like these things weren't designed to be looked at by oneself, but rather for the enjoyment of certain perverts. Ling mused, raising an eyebrow as she finished dressing. Gathering the stockings in her hands, she slowly slid one foot in, pulling and adjusting the smooth fabric. They weren't as tight as she had imagined, perhaps because her legs were slender. After getting dressed, Ling admired herself, though it was a shame the mirror was in the shower cabin. Her face flushed slightly. She was noticeably shy. She wasn't a pervert, but wearing this outfit evoked a strange, inexplicable feeling. To distract herself, she quickly hung her clothes by the stove to dry. The clothes she had washed yesterday hadn't dried yet, and now she had another set. With so many clothes, The single wooden plank wasn't enough space to hang them all. Having wood and nails, she decided to act. And Ling would build a clothes rack to place inside. She split several pieces of wood into sticks with the axe, fastened them together with nails, built a base, and then assembled the whole thing. Just like that, a simple clothes rack was complete. After hanging the clothes, and Ling glanced at the time. It was past 5. Although it was still early for nightfall, the overcast sky made it feel almost like evening. The heavy rain outside made it impossible to fish for supplies, confining her to the small wooden house. And Ling opened the chat module, wanting to see if other survivors were also experiencing rain, and of course, it was also a way to pass the time. The weather is unpredictable, and life is full of ups and downs. My tent is clearly reinforced, but it's still leaking. What a ripoff. Why did it suddenly start raining so heavily? Genius, go ask God. Seeing that everyone else is also experiencing rain, I feel relieved. I'm a navigator, and judging by this weather, I reckon this storm will last at least until tomorrow night. Holy crap, really? Don't scare me. I'm running low on food. It's raining, so just collect more rainwater for fresh water. It's a good thing, ha ha ha. I'm an idol. I can sing, dance, and rap. Can someone give me something to eat? I'm so hungry. Get the hell out of here. And Ling was speechless. Why was this idol always begging in the channel? Didn't he have any hands or feet? The chat module only had channel chat and friend chat, no global chat. At least she could be sure that it was currently raining across the entire channel. Maybe the regions are divided by channels? And Ling speculated. To chat with friends and other channels, she needed to know their ID numbers. However, with so many people in one channel, the IDs weren't assigned sequentially but randomly. Therefore, finding a survivor from another channel was purely a matter of luck. But Ling, naturally, had other ways to verify these things. Qin Xiao, for instance, wasn't in the same channel as Ling. She immediately sent him a private message. Ling, is it raining where you are? Qin Xiao, raining? I understand now. It seems the weather differs based on our channels. Ling, it's so refreshing talking to a smart person. Qin Xiao, thank you for the compliment. Ling, I wasn't complimenting you. I was sincerely praising you. Qin Xiao, as thanks for the food last time, here's something for you. He then traded her an item. Ling curiously retrieved it from the light screen. It was a small compass, slightly larger than a bottle cap. This was a good item, even somewhat valuable. Ling, thank you. Qin Xiao, you're welcome. Allies should help each other. He's a pretty nice guy. Ling placed the compass in her backpack. At least next time she entered the survival island, she wouldn't have to rely solely on the sun for navigation. It seemed Qin Xiao was also developing quickly. He had his own resources. He must have been from a wealthy family. Based on his response, she was basically certain of her guess. If this ocean world was a sphere, then these divided channels represented different regions. Experiencing the same weather within the same region was perfectly normal. After killing some more time, the sky outside completely darkened. Ling glanced at the time. It was just past 6 o'clock. Usually, the sun wouldn't have set yet at this time. Right? My fishing net? She remembered. Now that she had discovered a new use for her ability, she could use it as an umbrella. Leaving the wooden house, Ling fumbled her way to the back in the dark. Although she couldn't see what was on the fishing net, she chose to retrieve it all. Obtain supplies. Wood 6, plastic 4, rope 7, thatch 3, locked wooden crate 1, coral trout fish 1, king crab asterisk 2. The harvest was decent, especially the king crabs. Ling almost wanted to steam them for a seafood feast, but thinking about the leftovers from last night, she decided to finish those first. She couldn't waste food. Back in the wooden house, with her increasing understanding of her ability, she was becoming more proficient in its use. At this stage, she couldn't perform 2 tasks simultaneously with her ability. For example, while using it to block the rain, she couldn't use it for anything else. If it was just controlling a few wooden boards at the same time, that was still manageable. After taking care of these things, it was time for the exciting chest opening session. Ling had previously obtained 10 wooden chest keys, but hadn't used a single one yet. Now, she finally had another locked wooden crate. If it rains all day tomorrow, using the fishing net to gather some supplies is a good option. She took a key from the box and opened the locked wooden crate. Another card. A purple building card, with a crate image on the front. A spatial storage crate? And Ling wondered. 2 spatial storage crates would be nice, allowing her to store more supplies. Food storage crate building card. Can store a large amount of fresh food, granting permanent preservation. Building materials required. Wood 20, nails 16, scrap iron 6, plastic 2. Reward. Points *3. Isn't this a refrigerator? And it can store food permanently? After building it, she found it was no different from her storage crate. The overall size, the number of slots, and the storage capacity were all identical. The only difference was that the storage crate could hold anything, while the food crate could only store food. Now, Ling didn't have to worry about her fresh food spoiling. Chapter 55. Stalled progress in the storm. A delighted Ling immediately transferred all the food into her food crate. The food crate sat next to the storage crate, by the bedside. She even experimented and confirmed that cooked food could also be stored in the crate. It was exactly like a refrigerator, only 100 times better. After organizing the supplies, Ling decided it was time for dinner. Falling asleep to the sound of rain wasn't necessarily a bad thing. She started cooking. Dinner was the leftovers from yesterday. They hadn't spoiled yet, but were close. Reheating them would make them edible. Her appetite wasn't that large. She couldn't finish all the dishes from yesterday. She poured the remaining braised beef with potatoes over the rice in her bowl, creating a simple and unpretentious rice bowl. Quickly finishing her dinner, Ling leaned back in her chair and opened a can of mixed fruit cocktail. After eating her fill and spending some time on the light screen, it was time for bed. 2 hours later, Ling double-checked the remaining burn time of the stove, added more firewood, and then, feeling reassured, prepared to sleep. The night passed uneventfully. Whoosh! The strong wind on the island blew through the windows of the wooden house, directly into the room. The wooden windows rattled from the gusts, and even the wooden eaves of the roof couldn't completely withstand the fierce sea wind. Sporadic raindrops began to be blown into the house. Fortunately, Ling had added firewood the night before, so the fire in the iron stove hadn't gone out. Despite the chill outside, the warmth inside the house remained. Ling didn't sleep directly on the wooden bed, but on the wool felt, covered with cowhide. She was worried about catching a cold in the morning, especially after being drenched yesterday. Fortunately, this body was quite resilient, and she didn't feel any discomfort when she woke up. Ling got dressed and turned to close the rattling wooden windows, preventing more rainwater from splashing inside. The heavy rain continued outside, unchanged from yesterday, and the wind was even stronger. Looking out from the island, she could see the turbulent waves. Could that navigator have been right? Will this rain really last all day? Ling worried. The time to enter the survival island was fast approaching, yet she was faced with such terrible weather. This would waste another day. Waves crashed against the edge of the island, and surges of seawater flooded the land, turning it muddy. The 20-square-meter island was like a tiny ant in the vast ocean, seemingly about to be submerged at any moment. No, there are only 3 days left. I can't go to the resource island anymore, so these points won't be of much use if I keep them. Feeling uneasy, Ling decided to use all her points to expand the island's area. Whether she lived or died on the survival island was an unknown, and obtaining points there would be easy. The wooden house took up 10 square meters, and the shower cabin 4, totaling 14 square meters. On a 20-square-meter island, this felt rather cramped. With 78 points remaining, Ling directly exchanged them for 7 cornerstone cards, and used them all. The island's area expanded to 27 square meters in the stormy dawn. Looking at the enlarged island, she felt a sense of security. After doing all this, Ling prepared breakfast and spun the blessing pendant around her neck. Received blessing pendant bonus, double happiness, all obtained supplies will be doubled. Remaining time, 16 hours, 25 minutes, 34 seconds. It's the same blessing as the first day. It seems nothing will change today. Ling realized she had woken up a bit late. It was already 7:30. A pack of cookies, a pack of chocolate, and a cup of instant coffee constituted her breakfast. This awful weather. Will I really have to spend the whole day cooped up in the wooden house? Although the waves around the island weren't particularly strong, the sea wind was unusually fierce, making fishing impossible. Ling stood by the window, looking out. She now only hoped that the waves would wash more supplies ashore, so it wouldn't be a completely wasted day. Today's blessing, double happiness, would compensate for the losses caused by the storm to some extent. Everyone else's progress was stalled, but hers wasn't. This was her advantage. If only it were raining across the entire ocean world. Unable to do anything else, Ling resigned herself to her bad luck, sat down on the chair, and started idly browsing the light screen. By noon, the rain still hadn't let up and Ling decided to just relax. Since she couldn't make progress, she would stay in the wooden house. For lunch, she had her last bucket of instant noodles, vegetable soup, and a sausage. The first two were her last reserves, and Ling decided to finish them to save space in the crate. However, given the option, no one would choose to just steep the noodles. She cooked them properly. Some might say that instant noodles lose their soul if they aren't steeped. Wrong. They taste better cooked. After lunch, Ling casually glanced outside and was surprised to find a crate washed up on the island. This was a stroke of great luck. She casually tossed the trash into the stove to burn, then stood at the doorway and tested her ability. She could easily reach a distance of several meters. Just like that, she effortlessly brought the wooden crate into the house. Unfortunately, luck wasn't always on her side. This wooden crate wasn't locked. Inside, there were no cards, only some basic supplies. Wood 4, rope 3, gauze *2. That was it. Disappointed, Ling disassembled the crate and threw the wood into the stove. Oh, how could I be so stupid? Ling slapped her forehead. She had forgotten that although she couldn't get crates from the sea, she could trade for them with other survivors. Locked wooden crates were like Schrodinger's cat. Everyone was gambling on them containing good items. At the same time, those survivors without keys would be eager to sell them. In fact, wooden crate keys were rarer than locked crates, though locked crates weren't cheap either. Deciding to act, Ling immediately opened the light screen and got busy. Chapter 56, The Final Blessing. Ling spent the entire afternoon focused on the trading module. With 9 keys remaining, her goal was to acquire at least 9 locked wooden crates. Of course, the more, the better. She could always save any extras she couldn't open. The storm outside continued to rage, but as evening approached, the rain began to subside. At 6 o'clock, the rain stopped. The dense clouds parted, revealing glimpses of sunlight that grew larger and larger, and a brilliant rainbow appeared. Ling stepped onto the island, her feet sinking into the damp ground, and gazed at the distant sunset, taking deep breaths of fresh air. Being on this small island surrounded by the sea was already oppressive, and the prolonged rain had further dampened her spirits. Now, finally, the sky was clear. But it was too late to fish for supplies. She would have to wait until tomorrow. Having spent most of the afternoon resting, Ling had managed to trade for 12 locked wooden crates, at the cost of some food. Here, food was the most valuable currency. Having just experienced a downpour, the other survivors wouldn't be short on fresh water for a while. With no air pollution and only the clean evaporation of the sea, the rainwater should be quite pure. Double happiness or extreme luck? Ling sat inside the wooden house, pondering whether to open all the crates now. Extreme luck would certainly bring good fortune, but double happiness would double any card she received. Since both had their advantages, Ling decided to open half of the crates first. After all, she still had 2 days, and she might not receive the extreme luck blessing. With 9 keys, she would open 4 crates. Received: item card X1 2, reinforcement card X1 2, building card X1 2, mineral water X3 2, sausage X3 2, gauze X5 2, plastic X5 2, rope X6 2. Ling was delighted and quickly picked up the cards. Seeing the identical images, her expression stiffened. I forgot, the cards are fixed. If they were all upgrade cards or reinforcement cards, it would be fine. But item cards and building cards were predetermined upon opening the crate. Early warning flag item card. The stronger the wind and waves, the louder the bell rings. Can predict weather changes in advance. Great. She now had 2 of these, making the extra one useless. Greenhouse building card. For the professional farmer. Allows for cultivation on the island. Consumes similar building cards to expand the area. Initial area, 4x4. Building materials required, 40 lus. Reward, points *3. So, in layman's terms, it's a mini greenhouse? Ling looked at the size of her island. The wooden house and shower cabin were in the center, leaving no room for the greenhouse. The area is still too small. These 2 cards were useful, but she couldn't build them yet, so she put them away in the crate for now. As for the reinforcement cards, They were versatile and could be used for many things. After using an item card, a small black triangular flag appeared in the wooden house. It had no pattern. The flag's length was the same as the width of the wooden door. The flagpole was about 2 meters high, and a bell hung from a rope tied to the bottom. It looked completely ordinary, and Ling couldn't see anything special about it. Moreover, it wasn't small, making it impossible to carry around. After studying it for a while, she discovered it could be combined with her wooden house, with the flag flying at the top and the bell hanging inside. This would provide a basic early warning system, though she didn't know how much advance notice it would give. If that's the case, then getting 2 is just perfect, isn't it? And Ling went outside in the dark and tried combining the flag with the wooden boat. As expected, it worked. After all, the wooden boat and the island shared similar functions. Now the boat also had an early warning system, so she wouldn't be caught off guard by bad weather while exploring resource islands. She had been lucky this time. Both identical cards were useful. She had even been thinking about how to trade them away. Back inside the wooden house, she started preparing dinner. The 5th day was fast approaching, and she needed to make the most of her time. I'll eat something simple tonight. The food crate can preserve food indefinitely now. And Ling selected food from the crate. With the food crate, she had changed her previous mindset. Now she could eat whatever she wanted. Sealed food was also essential for trips to the survival island. Tonight's dinner: canned beef, braised chicken legs, and a self-heating rice meal. After satisfying her hunger and resting for a while, Ling prepared for bed. As for the 2 reinforcement cards, she hadn't decided how to use them yet. She needed to consider carefully, as she would be going to the survival island soon. Reinforcing the pistol had crossed her mind, but it wouldn't increase its ammo capacity, and its current power was sufficient. Using a card on it would be a waste. If it could replenish the ammo, she would only reinforce it after running out of bullets. The wooden bed, oars, wooden boat, even the pickaxe and axe, all needed reinforcement. It was a bit of a dilemma. She decided to wait until the need arose and keep the cards for now. The night passed without incident. The next day, the rising sun painted the sea gold, and a warm ray of sunlight shone into the wooden house. Ling opened her eyes drowsily and got out of bed. Her points had naturally increased by 2, adding to the previous 8, making a total of 10. The island's area expanded by another square meter, reaching 28. This was equivalent to the size of a standard bedroom, but Ling had to meticulously arrange everything she needed within this limited space. For breakfast, she had a cup of coffee and a slice of toast. After finishing breakfast, she looked down at her pendant, reached out, and spun it, starting her daily blessing. A golden hammer appeared. This is the last blessing. Ling quickly checked the information. Received blessing pendant bonus. Fortune favors the bold. Building has a chance to trigger a random upgrade. You deserve a legendary gold. Remaining time: 18 hours, 23 minutes, 45 seconds. Building? Does this mean the things I craft will receive a random quality upgrade? This wasn't difficult for Ling to understand, but everything she had encountered so far was basic white quality. How could she upgrade them? Should I try making another flint pickaxe to test it out? Chapter 57. Technological advancement begins. Forget it. I'll do that tonight. Today, I need to focus on fishing for crates. I have to land on that cursed survival island the day after tomorrow. The blessing lasted for a full day, so Ling had plenty of time to experiment with it tonight. She grabbed her fishing rod, walked out of the wooden house, and started her day's fishing. Over the course of the morning, 6 hours, she only managed to catch 3 wooden crates. Either her luck was terrible, or the crates simply drifted away from the island. There was nothing she could do about it. This blessing didn't provide any substantial help for fishing for crates, and her morning's harvest was average. Back in the wooden house, Ling simply cooked the coral trout, added some rice, and had it for lunch. Daytime was relatively short, and she usually avoided complex cooking to save time, but with another island visit imminent, she decided to conserve her sealed food. After resting for half an hour, figuring that crates would start appearing again, Ling went back out to continue fishing for the afternoon. Compared to the morning, the afternoon's harvest was much better. She caught 4 crates, 2 of which were locked. She also collected the items from the fishing net at the edge of the island. A day of monotonous fishing came to an end. Morning harvest: 3 wooden crates, wood 23, plastic 16, rope *2. Afternoon harvest: 4 wooden crates, 2 locked, thatch 5, gauze 12, wood asterisk 30. Fishing net harvest, wood 10, thatch 5, ribbon fish 2, grouper 1. Ling stored all the supplies in her storage crate and then began the crate opening session. From the 5 wooden crates, she obtained mineral water 3, 8 treasure porridge 2, steamed buns 2, keys 3. No cards. The rest were basic supplies and food. The only real gain was the 3 new keys. These things won't help me progress at all, and Ling sighed. Are resource islands the only way forward? To visit another resource island, she would have to wait until after returning from the survival island. After dismantling the wooden crates, Ling looked at the 3 keys in her hand, feeling frustrated, and decided to use them. She still had 5 keys left, and she didn't know when extreme luck would come again. She couldn't keep relying on that blessing. The first crate was ordinary, a locked food crate. Ling obtained some food from it. Potato chips 2, spicy snacks 2, strawberry cake 1, dried mango 2, mixed nuts asterisk 2. It was more of a snack crate than a food crate. Although this made Ling happy, she still wanted to accelerate her progress. Snacks were inconsequential. The second wooden crate was heavy. She shook it, and a grating sound came from inside. Opening it, she found it was full of square pieces of glass. 20 pieces of clean, transparent glass were neatly stacked inside. This was the first time she had opened something other than basic materials from a crate. She quickly checked the building module and workbench in the light screen and discovered a new item had been unlocked. Glass window. Perfect lighting, essential for house building. Required materials, glass 4, wood 4, nails 16. Reward, points 3. Ling looked at her wooden windows, then at the glass windows in the picture. Build. The drawbacks of the wooden windows were obvious. No light transmission, requiring her to open them during the day. The rectangular wooden house had 3 windows, one on each side of the wooden door and one at the back. After replacing all the wooden windows with glass ones, the interior of the house instantly became much brighter. These simple glass windows, although also sliding, could be closed when not needed. Built glass window, reward, bed set X2. There was even a system reward. This was great, and the bed set wasn't just sheets and blankets, but a mattress and pillows, 2 sets, in fact. Although Ling already had a pillow, having 2 more didn't hurt. Finally, I don't have to sleep covered with cowhide anymore. Her mood improved significantly. Although there was no technological progress, there was progress in her living conditions, which meant the day wasn't completely wasted. Ling turned her attention to the last crate. She shook it. It was light, and she couldn't hear any sound of objects colliding inside. There's a card. She quickly opened the last crate, and a lone purple card lay inside. Picking it up, she saw a strange furnace on the front. Wait, could this be? Furnace building card. No need for further explanation. Building materials required. Scrap iron 100. Reinforcement card 1. Reward. Points asterisk 5. Holy. Ling almost thought she had misread it. A building card that required a reinforcement card. She had only one word to describe it. Awesome. And 100 scrap iron wasn't something just anyone could obtain. Is it this extravagant because it's a groundbreaking building? At this point, she had to build it. Ling was just glad she had saved a reinforcement card. As soon as she finished building the furnace and placed it outside the wooden house, the system notification predictably sounded. Congratulations to the survivor for building the first furnace. Reward. Skill card X1. Unbelievable. Even the system had changed its usual reward pattern and given a card. Its previous rewards had been things like sanitary pads, JK uniforms, and toilet paper. This time, it was surprisingly generous. She took the skill card. It had a picture of a sword on the front, and as soon as it was given to her, it transformed into a swordsmanship skill card. Ling immediately used it. Her overall attributes increased again, and her level 1 basic swordsmanship upgraded to level 2. I feel so powerful. This feeling of getting something for free is amazing. She looked again at the furnace outside. It wasn't large, occupying a little over 1 square meter, placed right next to the wooden house by the sea. It was grayish-white, over 2 meters tall, with a square base and a rounded top, resembling a small stone tower. The furnace had 3 openings, front, back, and side, for adding fuel, adding ore, and retrieving the smelted ore, respectively. Ling tested it out. The burning time was the same as the stove, with thatch burning the shortest and coal the longest. Chapter 58. Golden Legend. And Ling returned to the wooden cabin and retrieved the iron ore, adding it to the furnace. Quantity, 50-50. Time, 29 minutes 58 seconds. The information displayed was simple and clear. The furnace's full capacity was 50 ores, and it took half an hour to smelt one, meaning a total of 25 hours. To smelt all the iron ore in this furnace would take more than a day, and during this time, the fuel supply couldn't stop. It seems that smelting ore is a huge project. I'm afraid the coal will run out before the ore is finished smelting. And Ling added 25 pieces of coal to the furnace and left it alone. After a good night's sleep, she should have quite a bit of iron smelted. No, wait. And Ling still had the heavenly blessing of fortune buff today. It was 6 o'clock now, and before midnight, she could smelt about 12 iron ores. She had to forge a weapon before then to see the effect of the blessing. If she didn't have the heavenly blessing of fortune tomorrow, she would suffer a significant loss. Back in the wooden cabin, and Ling wasn't in a hurry to start cooking. She was going to stay up a little late tonight, so it was okay to eat later. She came to the workbench and looked at the equipment unlocked by iron ore. They were helmet, breastplate, leg armor, and cloak. This was a set of heavy iron armor. Building the complete set would grant her 2 points. The armor in the picture didn't look bulky and resembled that of an ancient, fully armed soldier. But what was the significance of this armor? And Ling understood. This was probably prepared for ordinary people. Not everyone could become an esper, and the system also gave ordinary people a way to survive, which was to use or to forge armor. As for weapons, the choices were even more comprehensive. Knives, swords, hammers, shields, bows, spears, and even a two-handed sword. The weapons made from iron looked much stronger than those made from flint, bullhorns, deer antlers, or scrap iron. In addition to these, there were also tools, including pickaxes and axes, but she didn't know how much more efficient they were than flint. To acquire this whole set of equipment, she would need nearly 30 points and at least several hundred pieces of iron ore. This couldn't be accomplished in a short time, but Ling didn't plan to build these unnecessary things. Only 3 items were useful to her: a pickaxe, an axe, and a sword. That's right, she wanted to use this remaining time to forge a sword to use as her weapon. She couldn't learn swordsmanship in vain. Her profession couldn't become just a decoration. It was also a good opportunity to test the new blessing. As for the 2 tools, there was no time now, and besides, they weren't essential on the survival island. She would have to wait until her next return. And Ling looked at these newly unlocked tools and suddenly remembered that she now had a furnace, so lust might also be useful. But then came the disappointing realization. Lust couldn't be put directly into the furnace. She would need other buildings to fire lust. Forget it, I'll have to deal with it later. And Ling went back to the wooden cabin and started to prepare her dinner. She had plenty of time in the evening, so she could eat a more sumptuous meal. Grouper soup, fried hairtail sections, steamed buns with chili sauce. A rich dinner was ready in less than an hour. She ate with relish. The fish in this sea were very strange and looked quite bizarre. As someone from an inland city who had never seen the sea and was a landlubber, and Ling really didn't know how to eat these fish, so she could only use them to make soup. After finishing dinner and washing the dishes, she checked the chats of other survivors to kill time. Without realizing it, time finally came to 11:30 p.m. And Ling closed the chat, walked out of the wooden cabin, and went to check the smelting progress of the furnace. 11 iron ingots were quietly lying on the grass of the island. These ingots were square, like bricks, with smooth and clean surfaces without any impurities. Forging an iron sword only required 10 iron ingots, and Ling now had enough. She came to the workbench and clicked on the iron sword module. Iron sword. Dispels evil. Exceptionally sharp. The best choice for cutting people. Materials needed. Iron ingot 10. Rope 5. Gauze *1. Points gained. *2. The materials were sufficient, but the option was still grayed out. What's going on? And Ling clicked on it, and a prompt immediately popped up. A forging table is required to make an iron sword. Forging table, workbench 1, reinforcement card 1. And Ling. Fine, you're going to play it like this, not even leaving me a single card. Helpless, she finally chose to reinforce the workbench first. Since it was a reinforcement, she didn't get any points. Now, the build button lit up. As Ling touched it with her finger, a series of prompts appeared again. Obtained the heavenly blessing of fortune buff, Ordinary iron sword upgraded to excellent iron sword. Damage increased. Obtained the heavenly blessing of fortune buff. Ordinary iron sword upgraded to fine iron sword. Cuts iron like mud. Obtained the heavenly blessing of fortune buff. Ordinary iron sword upgraded to epic iron sword. One additional trait. Obtained the heavenly blessing of fortune buff. Ordinary iron sword upgraded to legendary iron sword. Two additional traits. Holy crap, a golden legend. A gleaming golden sword instantly appeared in front of Ling. The iron sword had a chilling gleam. The entire blade was about 1 meter long, with beautiful patterns on the blade. The hilt was wrapped with layers of rope and looked very beautiful. The sword was beautiful, the kind of ancient Chinese sword that Ling liked, not a Western single-handed sword. The only minor flaw was that it didn't have a scabbard. The three traits were sharpness, bleeding, and evil cleaving. Sharpness meant it could cut through hair and iron effortlessly. It wasn't an exaggeration at all. Even Ling was stunned. She had never seen such a sharp sword. In her impression, only a butcher's knife gave people this kind of feeling. As for bleeding, it probably meant that the wounds wouldn't heal. She wasn't foolish enough to experiment on herself. As for the last trait, it should be related to dealing with monsters, but the specific effect was unknown. Chapter 59. The Last Day. The moment she controlled the sword, Ling felt that its power and speed were amplified, completely different from controlling wooden planks or pickaxes. She experimented for a few more minutes, fully adapting to her ability, before controlling the iron sword to fall into her hand. Placing it on the table, it was already quite late. After finishing the preparatory work, she could go to sleep. She refilled the fuel in both the iron stove and the furnace, and replenished the iron ore, so that they could continue working non-stop throughout the night. After finishing all this, it was already 12 o'clock. Ling briefly washed up, spread out her bedding, and finally could have a comfortable and good night's sleep. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, Ling's fixed biological clock woke her up on time. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and sat up. The soft bedding was much more comfortable than the cowhide. Although the wooden bed was very simple, it didn't affect her sleep quality at all. Twisting the pendant, Ling took a closer look, and it was a target pattern. Sure enough, today is no longer the heavenly blessing of fortune. Received prayer pendant bonus, bullseye, fishing, throwing, ranged attacks, etc. are guaranteed to hit. Remaining time, 18 hours, 11 minutes, 11 seconds. Unfortunately, she still didn't randomly get the supreme luck. Now that the 6 blessings of the pendant were clear, Ling needed to plan accordingly for non-essential situations so as to maximize her benefits. For example, when she got the supreme luck blessing, she would specifically use it to open chests. When she got the heavenly blessing of fortune blessing, she would specifically use it to forge equipment. And when she got the great luck and great profit blessing, she would specifically use it to land on resource islands for gathering and so on. Putting on her slippers, Ling started to prepare her breakfast, a pack of toast with a sausage and a bowl of 8 treasure porridge. After a simple breakfast, she began her busy day. The point she had gained yesterday had been cleared again, and the island area had reached 29 square meters, a little bigger than before. Ling clearly remembered that today was the 7th day after she returned from the Novice Island, which meant that tomorrow, all the survivors would have to land on an island again. She couldn't predict the system's rules, nor did she know what kind of dangers she would encounter on the next island. The only thing she could do at present was to make as many preparations as possible. At least she wouldn't have a food shortage like last time. This time, she would bring enough food for 10 days, so even if the rules were the same as the Novice Island, she could still survive safely. A day passed in the blink of an eye. The sun in the west emitted an orange-red glow, and the light pierced through the strangely shaped clouds, dyeing them with color. It's a fiery sunset. Tomorrow must be a good day. Ling sighed as she watched the sunset. At this moment, there were fewer and fewer floating supplies on the sea surface, and they were about to disappear. She stopped fishing and began to take stock of today's supplies. She had fished a total of 10 chests throughout the day, 3 of which were locked. Of course, there were other supplies, but they were all basic materials, and Ling didn't care much about them. The only thing she expected from these 7 ordinary wooden chests was to get some special items. At the very least, some food would be good. Acquired supplies, reinforcement card 1, building card 1, item card 1, key 2, whole wheat bread 4, milk 2 40 ml 2, compressed biscuits *4. The rest were just some basic supplies, and Ling didn't bother paying attention to them. However, to get 3 cards and 2 keys from 7 chests was already considered very good luck. She would keep the reinforcement card for later use. The building card and item card had the images of a wardrobe and a kitchen knife respectively. Wardrobe building card, a must-have for home. Materials required, bamboo 30, plastic 10, wood 20, iron nails 50. Points gained, *3. Kitchen knife item card. No matter how good your kung fu is, you're still afraid of a kitchen knife. Of course, it can also be used to cut fruits, but it will have a slight garlic and ginger flavor. Ling used both cards. The kitchen knife was plain and simple, just like the rectangular kitchen knives used at home. As for the wardrobe, it was square and unremarkable. Just by looking at the materials, you could imagine its appearance. The only advantage was that it was all natural and formaldehyde-free. It seems that the wooden cabin still needs to be reinforced. As the furniture increases, it's becoming more and more crowded. Ling frowned slightly. She originally thought that upgrade cards and reinforcement cards were 2 parallel types of cards, but now it seemed that the former was much rarer than the latter. After allocating these items and adding materials to the furnace, she returned to the cabin and began to pack her luggage in preparation for landing on the island. This time, not only Ling, but almost everyone had made preparations in advance. She didn't plan to sleep tonight. The scene of the last time she appeared on the Novice Island was still vivid in her mind. Ling didn't even know how she appeared on the island. She only remembered falling asleep in bed, and when she woke up again, she had left the construction island. This was a bit too unbelievable. If she encountered danger before waking up, it could be fatal. Like last time, Ling packed the supplies in her backpack and placed it beside her bed. This time, her backpack was full, unlike last time when there were many empty spaces, because Ling knew that the so-called supplies on the survival island were completely different. After everything was ready, she started to prepare her dinner. A plate of stir-fried beef with green onions and a bowl of rice was her simple and somewhat unadorned dinner for today. Just then, the system prompt appeared again. At dawn, all survivors will once again land on an island. Good luck to everyone. This prompt popped up from the light curtain and had an automatic broadcast function. Most of the survivors were not asleep at this time, and it was difficult not to notice this prompt. With the appearance of this prompt, the survivors felt the urgency again. They understood that from tomorrow onwards, they would have to face life and death crises again, and no one wanted to die. The complaining, cursing, and even some excited survivors were all rapidly spamming the chat module. Ling naturally didn't have time to pay attention to them. After clearing the bowls and chopsticks, she took out the remaining large portion of beef from the chest, cut off a tiny piece with the knife, and placed it on the table. After doing all this, she sat on the bed and began to quietly wait for dawn. Compared to not getting enough rest, she was more afraid of being in an unknown place and never waking up. Chapter 60. Landing on the Survival Island. Time gradually approached midnight. Ling twisted the prayer pendant around her neck, initiating today's blessing. A golden human figure appeared. Prayer pendant bonus received. Unbroken will. The body may perish, but the will shall endure. Increases all physical attributes. Time remaining, 23 hours, 59 minutes, 50 seconds. Seeing this blessing, Ling frowned. It seemed tomorrow's landing wouldn't be easy. However, this time, she felt the blessing's effect was stronger, likely related to her previously increased attribute points. It appeared Unbroken Will provided a percentage-based bonus. The higher her base attributes, the greater the benefit. The sea was silent. Aside from the faint yellow light emanating from the small wooden cabin on the lonely island, the surroundings were pitch black. Ling leaned against the bed, her consciousness blurring. Aimless waiting was the most tedious and sleep-inducing. After an unknown amount of time, she suddenly shook her head, snapping awake. Looking out the window, the sky was still dark. Good. She quickly checked the pendant to confirm the time. 5:30 am. Dawn would break soon. This oceanic world was strange. The daytime was scorching, suggesting it should be summer, based on the temperature. But both sunrise and sunset seemed to follow a fixed schedule. Otherwise, at 5 a.m. in summer, dawn should have already broken. Ling got out of bed, having not even removed her shoes all night. She quickly washed up, splashing water on her face to wake herself up. Then, she tied her hair back, quietly awaiting the arrival of dawn. The messages from the survivors in the chat module had become sparse. Most were likely still asleep. The sun slowly rose in the east, and Ling watched as the darkness on the sea surface gradually dispersed, her heartbeat involuntarily accelerating. Time: 6 o'clock. A blinding white light suddenly filled in Ling's vision, forcing her to close her eyes. It was no use. The white light persisted. In an instant, enveloped by the white light, she felt disoriented, a scorching heat surging around her. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself in the middle of a desert. Before she could observe her surroundings, the light screen prompt appeared. Its information was more crucial than the environment, so Ling immediately focused her attention. Island name: Death Desert. Objective: 25 teams surviving. Description: a desert island known as the Death Desert. There are many abandoned towns on the island. No one knows where the inhabitants went, perhaps driven away by the terrifying sandstorms that occur periodically. Note: each team consists of 2 randomly paired survivors who will appear at the same location. Achieve the objective to leave the island. All functions except crafting and dismantling will be disabled on the island. Countdown: 5, 4, 3. The light screen vanished as the countdown ended, and Ling was still absorbing the information in shock. Ugh, so hot. A weak female voice came, and Ling immediately turned around to find a girl about her own age lying behind her. The girl groggily opened her eyes and sat up, her own light screen displaying the same prompts. This was Ling's randomly assigned teammate. After a moment, their eyes met. The girl smiled first and spoke, "Hello, my teammate. My name is Suyu. I'm Ling." She observed Suyu, whose eyes were clear. She wore a clean gray tracksuit and looked to be under 1.6 meters tall. "Sister, you have a beautiful name, and you're also very pretty," Suyu said with a chuckle, noticing Ling staring. "Don't worry, I'm no worse than a boy." Ling looked puzzled but nodded. This was her teammate. She had to find a way to survive with her. Looking around, the vast sea stretched out behind them. They were at the edge of the island. In front of them, as far as the eye could see, was desert. There were mountains, boulders, and even some buildings in the distance. This wasn't a purely desolate island. 25 teams surviving, with no time limit. That means if we want to leave this island quickly, we have to. Suyu, despite appearing innocent, was quick-witted. "Yes, the system is telling us to kill," Ling said, frowning. She hadn't expected such a brutal survival island after the novice one. "We could avoid killing and hide. Let the other survivors fight it out," Suyu suggested. "I'm afraid that won't work. Look over there." Ling pointed towards the sea. The distant horizon was tinged with yellow. A terrifying storm was approaching the island. This corresponded to the terrifying sandstorm mentioned in the system description. Have you played Battle Royale games? This sandstorm will probably keep moving, forcing all survivors to gather towards the center of the island. As soon as Ling finished speaking, both her and Suyu's light screens appeared. Survivor 3060 has killed Survivor 1020. They exchanged glances and looked at the remaining team count below. Still 100. This meant someone had killed their own teammate. Indeed, on a deserted island with scarce resources, not only did they have to fight, but they also had to survive. Where would the resources come from? Naturally, from plundering their companions. If one person's supplies could last for 5 days, then 2 people's would double that. With this message, the atmosphere between the two instantly became delicate, but neither showed it. They were both worried that the other would attack them. Although the rule was 2 people per team, it didn't say 1 person per team was disallowed. This meant that with 25 teams surviving, a maximum of 50 people, or a minimum of only 25 people, could survive. The faster they killed, the faster they could leave. "Let's go. We need to head towards the center of the island in advance. After all, we don't know how big this island is." Ling called out, taking out the compass from her backpack to determine their direction. Suyu's tense nerves relaxed, and her hand loosened slightly. What if we encounter someone? Ling understood what she meant. Indeed, they needed to agree on a course of action before setting off. "We don't run." These 2 simple words made her stance clear. Suyu smiled. "I was thinking the same thing." If their first reaction upon encountering someone was to run, their supplies would eventually run out. This time, the system had anticipated the actions of all survivors. Everyone thought the survival goal was to survive for 10 days and had prepared supplies accordingly, but the system threw a curveball with an indefinite time limit, causing panic.